Is this better?
That's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
30-hour drive. You're the newbie. Hook up the trailer and go.
Are we ready?
Take a friend.
We're live? Yep.
Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. This is Riley with ConcealedCarry.com, Director of Training, and I'm sitting here with Jacob Paulson, President.
It's true.
ConcealedCarry.com. And welcome to the USCCA Expo 2018. We're here in Louisville, Kentucky, and we are just super excited to be a part of this show. ConcealedCarry.com is providing live coverage throughout the show in our broadcast studio here, and it's just going to be a great time because we got great people lined up for interviews today. We have Sylvia here with us, and we are excited to be talking with her and others. So, yeah. What do you think, Jacob?
Let's do this.
Yeah.
Right.
So we've got Sylvia
Bergstedt.
Bergstedt. Want to make sure I get that right. And Sylvia, you're out of Pittsburgh,
Yes.
and you are a firearms instructor.
I am a firearms instructor, yes.
A long history of instructing in firearms.
Well, long history of shooting firearms.
And shooting.
That's right.
Yes. Well, I imagine there's plenty of opportunities to teach throughout, along your long career as well.
Yes. I couldn't hit a broadside of a barn. Now I'm pretty good with the gun, so.
So tell us, Sylvia, a little bit about your background, just for those who are watching who don't know you. Tell us a little bit about how you got started, your career, in your career, but then how you've transitioned to the private sector as well.
Sure. I went to Rutgers University. I was in the 4-year ROTC program for the Air Force. Got commissioned as an officer into the Air Force Office of Special Investigation. I started my assignment in Torrejon Air Base, Spain in 1989. I saw Desert Shield right before I left. Then I went to Louisiana for a year and a half, and then I was promoted to be a detachment commander for an OSI detachment in Grand Forks, North Dakota. That's where I got my master's degree. And after that, they moved me to D.C. to be on the on-site inspection agency team, which did the missile treaties back in the 90s. Those were the big thing. We did reciprocal treaties with the Russians. I left active duty there in D.C., transferred over to the reserves, stayed with OSI throughout the rest of my career, 23 years. Retired January of 2011 with OSI. I went all the way to individual mobilization augmentee for the Directorate of Plans and Programs, so all the rules and procedures for the agency. Yeah. In the meantime, when I left active duty, I went over and I signed up with Department of Justice IG. I worked there for 3 years, jumped over to GSA IG. In the IG world, if you want to move, if you want to go up in grade, you got to change agencies. So a lot of us in the IG world have been through 3, 4, 5 agencies. So I went to GSA IG, became a assistant special agent in charge of the Washington, D.C. office. I had 10 people working for me there. I decided I didn't want to be in D.C. anymore. And my husband wanted to go home to Pittsburgh. So I changed agencies again to Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration. I was there for 3 years. And I decided that wasn't really what I wanted to do. So I went and changed again. My last assignment was with the Department of Energy IG, where I had some really, really complex white fraud type cases.
Sure.
But I always loved shooting. I love shooting. Sometimes I was shooting 6 times a year, which is not common. I mean, it sounds like it's common for law enforcement, but a lot of local PDs don't get to shoot more than once or twice a year, and a lot of federal, they only have to shoot quarterly. And I was shooting up to 6 times a year between the Air Force and my job. And I was shooting all disciplines. I had to be proficient in rifle for the Air Force. I had to be proficient in shotgun, rifle, and handgun for my job. So I got to do a lot of drills, a lot of fun stuff. Now, like I said, when I started, I'd never shot a gun before. And I'm cross-eyed dominant. So that means I shoot with my left eye and I use my right hand to shoot, which makes it infinitely harder.
Yeah. So how do you shoot rifles, I'm curious? Because I know some folks will shoot left-handed on the rifle platform. I have to shoot to qualify left-handed.
Yeah. I will still what I do is I kind of cheat a little bit now. I have an EOTech, and so I can get that far-out scope, which I get with my pistol, so I can use both eyes. Mm-hmm. And that way I can shoot my AR-15 with my right hand, which is because I look like a duck out of water when I'm shooting with my left hand. But the Air Force said, you want to qualify, you got to shoot with your left hand. So
yeah,
I did.
That makes sense. Sure.
Awesome. I think you had a question.
I was going to ask, tell us a little bit more about what you're doing in Pittsburgh now, kind of, what the business looks like there and what people could do there to connect with you.
Well, this is a male-dominated environment.
No.
It is. And I really enjoyed shooting, and I know that there's a lot of women who I have as friends that don't feel comfortable going to male instructors for whatever reason.
Sure.
And so I love shooting. I love the opportunity to get out on the range and do stuff and teach people. I've always loved to teach people. So I decided to open up my own business January of last year. And, I've been somewhat successful. There's a lot of instructors in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
There's a couple female instructors as well. What I have going for me is that I've got 28 years of experience. And what I find is that when the ladies come to my class, even when they say, I don't like guns, by the time they're done with me, they're like, when are we going to the range again?
Yeah. You bring up a good point, and this is something that I think about a lot, and that is that when we have students come through classes and we have people getting involved in the firearm world, I often wonder, are they enjoying it enough to keep doing it? Because if it's not a point of pleasure, people won't practice enough, will they? So talk a little bit about kind of your perspective there, and what does it take for someone to actually not just say, okay, I get it, I'll do it, I'm a little bit more proficient, but I actually now have fun doing this. It's something I want to engage in.
Sure. And what I find is the transition happens when, I break out the NRA class into 3 days. Mm-hmm. So by the time we get to the range, we can dedicate a whole 4 hours in the range. And they're not going out there feeling like this is the first time I'm handling a gun and position and everything. So when I start out, I get all the classroom stuff done mostly the first night. And then I bring out my CERT pistols and my laser software. Mm-hmm. And the second night is all about not only do I teach the fundamentals, but then we use the laser software to do some diagnostics. I tweak them. I say, oh, yeah, let me put this over your eye. And, wow, I'm actually hitting the target, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I say to them, by the time you get out to the range, all I'm introducing to you at that point is recoil management.
Right.
And they get out there, and when they see that they can hit that bullseye, for the first time ever having shot their gun or ever shot a gun at all, wow, they get excited. And the ladies get really excited. And the guys tend to be goofier about it. So I have more trouble with the guys qualifying than with the ladies qualifying.
Yeah, a little more. Ego gets in the way, maybe. A-type males. There's none of those around here.
No, but you know what? If they come to me, no matter how much level of experience they have, whether they've been around guns all their lives or this is the first time they've ever touched a gun, they all have a takeaway. Because I try to teach it down to a level that's understandable, that's visually understandable so that they can understand. It's not just standing like this. You got to have that push-pull. That's going to lock you in place, things like that, that kind of help them understand. And the first thing I get with the women is, I can't pull the slide back. I said, because you're trying to do it out here. Do you open a jar out here?
Yeah.
No, you bring it into your body where you can use the most torque of your body. Once they get that dynamic, they're like, oh, I can do this, and then the gun isn't so intimidating.
Yeah,
right.
So this is interesting. I love this because I think that this is a challenge, right, for people to actually enjoy it. And what I'm hearing from you is what you observe is if I first remove the fear and then I introduce a sense of accomplishment.
Absolutely.
Then why wouldn't people enjoy this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what I do is I tend to find that some of the ladies will come back to subsequent things that I sponsor because I'm affiliated with the U.S. Law Shield. Mm-hmm. And so I've been sponsoring seminars for U.S. Law Shield. Mm-hmm. And we sponsored the situational training one. Mm-hmm. And I had some of the people from my class come to the situational training seminar, and they really enjoyed it because there you actually get to engage with the video.
Yeah. So, every little thing they do makes it easier for them to do more.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So do you spend most of your time teaching kind of more of those basics, kind of marksmanship type stuff, or do you take anybody further than that as well?
I find myself, even though I have certification in personal protection inside the home, they're not running to sign up for that. What everybody wants is like the basic skill stuff. Well, and I get a lot of that.
You're having a little success, though, because, tell me if I'm wrong, but if I'm remembering right, in Pennsylvania, they don't have to take any class at all to get a permit. So what you're primarily seeing are people who are humble enough to say, I'd like a little education.
Absolutely.
I'd like a little training.
Absolutely.
And that's for one, that's reassuring that we have people out there that are willing to put some cash down and go and get some education, even though they don't have any legal obligation to do so. So that's really that's encouraging to me. That's exciting.
I'll tell you what, it's scary to me that I have ladies that come into the class and gentlemen who come into the class for the first time to learn how the basics. They've had their concealed carry permit for 3 years,
right.
2 years,
and
3 years,
they may
4
even
years.
be carrying it around.
Right.
And they have a gun they've never shot.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Bought a gun, bought some ammo, stuck the ammo in the gun.
Right.
Stuck it in a holster.
Stuck it in the holster.
Got my permit.
I'm good to go. Or just carry my permit. I mean, I don't even have a gun, but
Sure.
I'm carrying my permit
Sure.
out. And I'm sitting there going, if you have a permit and you have a gun and you've never shot your gun, you're more likely to get hurt by your own gun than you are of stopping any kind of aggressor. And so, yeah, it's great to have them come into class. They learn a lot. I think they learn a lot.
Yeah.
You know, I don't follow them around afterwards to see if they go to the range, but I do tell them, I said, don't stop here. You've got to take this. It's a perishable skill. You've got to take it the next step. And,
absolutely.
And go to the range and do stuff.
Now, Sylvia, just so everyone's aware as well, we recently got connected with you, and you're joining our instructor network.
Yes.
So we're very excited to be promoting all your classes and training on concealedcarry.com. I think that there's still some work to be done on our end, probably, to get everything set up and get your bio in there and
hey, that's okay.
everything. But we're really excited to be partnered with you. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the whole rack the slide thing. Are there other common things you see among, whether it's just female students or not, it could be all students. What are some of the other common things that a simple tweak makes a big difference for your students?
So one of the things I have to visualize with a lot of the students is the trigger pull, because they want to jerk that trigger, you know. Low and to the left for right-hand shooters, low and to the right for left-hand shooters. And so what I say to them is I said, think of your body as being paralyzed, completely paralyzed. And the only thing you can move is this finger, and ever so slowly.
Yeah.
And you're moving it in a level format. You're not going at an angle. You're not
straight back.
When I do that with them, and I say, remember, do that, then they get it. They get it. Otherwise, they're just, they're jerking.
And they see it on the target, too.
And they do. They see the difference on the target, how suddenly, that moves right into the target and not down here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
The other thing, too, is that, when they start anticipating that the recoil, the bang and the pullback, some of those who can't get that out of their head, once they've shot the gun once, now they know what's coming, and they're gonna now, and I'm gonna hit it now. Here comes the recoil. And so I'll be singing in their ear, London Bridge. I don't know why I picked that song, but I'm distracting their mind.
Right.
And then you see them get better. So I said, now you sing London Bridge in your own ear, because I am not doing this the whole session.
You have to let the trigger surprise you.
Yeah, these are just tricks I've learned over time.
Yeah.
Just from my own fallacies and the
Sure.
problems I had when I was shooting.
Yeah, when we're diagnosing.
Get out of my own head. Get out of your own head. Yeah.
Yep.
The funniest thing was my firearms instructor used to always say, you're consistent. You're consistently 20 points up or 20 points down. If you have a good first shoot, then you get cocky and your score goes down. If you have a bad first shoot, you go up 20 points the next shot.
That is the nature of the beast.
Do you do any competitive shooting by chance?
I've been trying to get into IDPA just because that's probably as close to actual work that I used to do in law enforcement. The thing is that the IDPA, the club that I work with is up in Newcastle, which is an hour away. And IDPAs are Wednesday nights, so it's kind of tough to get to.
Totally.
Sure.
I know I got to find something closer, but I just haven't had the time. I've been trying to get the business going and all that stuff.
Sure.
You know how it is.
Oh, yeah.
I got all these great ideas, and I'm just constantly hustling to get the next group of people in.
That's right. Well, I tell you, we certainly know plenty of instructors in states like Pennsylvania, Georgia, Washington, Indiana, where no training is required to get a permit, and these instructors struggle to get any students at all.
Exactly.
So it's good that we're, I think, A, you're doing something right. And B, I also would like to believe that, generally speaking, our industry is getting smarter about the necessity of training, not just the legality in terms of a requirement to check out on a list.
Absolutely. I mean, the liability issue, and I'm just, but I'm a firm believer in that in every critical incident situation, mass shootings, if someone with a gun had been there, there would have been less casualties. Somebody who knows what to do with a gun.
Right.
What I'm worried about is the other end of the spectrum in Pennsylvania, is that somebody walking around with a CCW and a gun and no training gets into a situation where they have to decide whether they're going to engage or not.
Yeah, yeah.
And
that's a little frightening.
That's the scary part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You spend much time in your classes talking about the laws?
You know, not in the basic class. I do get into some of the basic Pennsylvania laws because they're a little quirky.
Right.
About if you don't have a CCW, you can't have your gun and the ammunition in the same place. So it's like, you know, you have to have your ammunition in a box in the trunk and your gun, you know, in a box under, and only going to and from the range.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
That's an interesting law.
So it's and most people don't know that.
Yeah.
And
you know,
a
a lot of people get in trouble.
A lot of people get in trouble, and the laws change all the time.
Yeah.
That's why I really like about U.S. Law Shield and why I signed up as a member before I ever became affiliated with them. Because even me, a lot of those laws didn't apply to me in the federal sector because I carried a badge that got me into everywhere, and you know, I had to follow the rules. But I mean.
Right.
I could go into places because I was legally carrying under the authority of my agency. And now I find myself, you know, I have to think about where am I going today, because I don't want to be carrying and then I go to get stamps or something, because I don't have that cover of law anymore.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And
the badge
so,
doesn't
you know,
The post office.
Yeah.
Which is another one of those places that it's so easy, I think, even for citizens.
Post office.
To not even think about it. It's such a common place that we all go to.
Sure.
Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Good stuff. What do you see as being the next steps for you and your business?
Well, there's I'm a certified instructor by the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center to teach law enforcement active shooter response. And I did that for my agency for the last 2 years or 3 years before I retired. And we did it on a national level. We had a large discussion about being first responders, because we're not. Our job is, our scope of duty is inside the Department of Energy. However, we have 24/7 carry. So the chances that you're going to get into a critical incident is going to be off duty is more likely than a critical incident on duty.
Interesting. Sure.
And then the decision is, what are we going to do? You know, what are you going to do? And that's a personal choice between each person. Because there is the Good Samaritan law, but there is no requirement for us to act.
Right.
Right.
And so those are the discussions we were having on a national level right before I retired. But I really, really enjoyed the active shooter training. I was the only girl in the class, and they called me Rambette by the time I got done. But it was very good training. It was very good training because you have that split second to decide, good guy, bad guys, and they would throw that at us. They'd have people come around the hallway in the J-hook screaming at us. You had a split second to decide, is that a bad guy or a good guy? Yeah. And it's an eye-opener because it's not traditional law enforcement style of training. It's a totally different type of training. After Parkland, a friend of mine tagged me on Facebook, said, I'm going to get my son a bulletproof vest and send him to training with Sylvia. And I started thinking, I'm like, how can I take what I learned there and apply it to the civilian side? And so I kind of created a course that I just started putting out there, active shooter preparedness training. And it's based a lot on the data that I collected, the FBI stuff that I researched when I was studying up on all the mass shootings from 2000 to 2014 at the time. Now it's 2016.
Yeah.
And so there's that aspect of it. You know, what's the reality versus what you're hearing on the news? And then, you know, I'm not one for reinventing the wheel. So I think that the FBI's model of run, hide, fight is a very good model. And so I incorporate that because you still think that after so many years, and the run, hide, fight model has been out there, and you still have teachers who come up to me and I ask them, well, do they teach you run, hide, fight? No, they put us in front of a video and they said we were trained, or the Alice method, which isn't always necessarily
universally applicable.
Universally applicable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the second part of the class is the run, hide, fight. And the third part of the class is what nobody's doing in these active shooter trainings, which is, you know, just that basic, what they taught us in the military, first aid and buddy care. You know, if you're out and I got a better shot at getting shot at in the military, and you're next to me, you better know what to do to save my butt, and so you can pull me out of there, and I need to know what I have to do to you to save you, to pull you out of there. That's why the casualty levels have dropped in the military. It's because everybody, no matter where you are, if you're going to get deployed or whatever, you're going to learn this basic first aid training on stop the bleed. Is basically what it is. It's gunshot wound training. There's other things involved, but
sure, that's the core.
But that's the core of it, and so I've kind of incorporated that as the third part of the training. So you know, I've got a 3-hour course. The students get a small trauma kit. I found a decently priced trauma kit. It contains the 3 very essential ingredients: a tourniquet, an Israeli bandage, and an emergency blanket. Those are the 3 core ingredients in a trauma kit in order to stave off death. And so that's what I incorporate in little trauma kit. It's perfect. They get that as part of the class. You know, like I said, I just started putting the class out there. I'm actually doing another class on Train the Teacher Day. I don't know if you guys know about Train the Teacher Day.
There have been some conversations about that,
So the morning class is the active shooter preparedness class. The afternoon class is the NRA simulated marksmanship training. For those teachers who think they've had the Alice or the Run High fight and they don't want to do that, there's another option for the afternoon.
Cool. So what's the name of that course going to be?
Active shooter preparedness training.
Awesome. Well, we would encourage you to check out Sylvia's courses, and hopefully very soon those will be on concealedcarry.com as soon as we get our acting gear on our side. Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure to talk with you today, Sylvia. We appreciate you for joining us live here from the USCCA Expo 2018. And hope you enjoy the rest of your show.
I plan on it.
And folks, just give you a little preview of what we got coming up. Just a few minutes here at the show, Jacob and I are going to be presenting on the demonstration stage, which is just next door here, about 8 common muscle memory mistakes. And so if you happen to be watching and you're here, you know, you can come on over to the demo stage and we'll be presenting that content. We're going to try to pipe that into the live feed, but we'll see if we're successful in being able to do that. So I can't promise you that. Otherwise, you'll see some lovely footage of the show floor here. We're starting to now see a ton of people coming to the show. We got folks lining up at our booth. We're giving away some really cool stuff as part of the show. So anyway, we also have coming up at 3:30 an interview with Tim Schmidt.
4 o'clock.
Was that 4?
Yeah, about 30 minutes from now, 4 o'clock.
It is about 3:30 now.
Yep.
That's right. So 4 o'clock we got Tim Schmidt coming up, and then following Tim Schmidt, is that Chris and Michelle Cerino, or do we got somebody between?
I already forgot.
Yeah, but anyway,
if you're watching
don't
this,
miss Tim
probably
Schmidt.
on the page below this video is the schedule.
Don't miss Tim Schmidt at 4 o'clock. You'll want to come back. And so with that, we'll see you here in just a little bit.
Thanks, everyone.
military guide, survive anything.
You hear me as well?
Yeah, you're not as good.
Not quite as good, huh?
That's okay.
That's true. It's in general, you know.
I have no problem with that. So thank you for taking some time for us. It's going to be such a great event over the next 3 days. We hope that you're going to get plugged in to all the seminars, the presentations, that you have the schedule, and you're going to be scheduled. So muscle memory mistakes. We call these the MMMs.
That's right.
They don't melt in your hand. They're not chocolate and delicious, but they are muscle memory mistakes.
I thought it was supposed to be kind of, you know.
No, it's not supposed to be at all. It's just an acronym, Riley. Muscle memory mistakes. You can't hear him at all. Your mic is completely dead.
Let's see if it's even turned on here. How about now? Anything?
No, you're still dead.
Still nothing? Is there a volume control?
Yeah, maybe we get the handheld for Riley because he's not special
Yeah,
enough.
I can do the handheld.
Yeah. It worked out. As long as the best guy gets the mic, we're good.
How about now?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're good? All right, so we're going to talk about 8 of these muscle memory mistakes. And let me clarify what we mean by muscle memory mistake. We think of a muscle memory mistake as something you might do in training that is going to set you up for failure later. Something that inadvertently, without thinking about it, you're creating a certain type of muscle memory that is bad. And we all talk about muscle memory all the time. It's the kind of thing we want to make instinctive, automated response. But sometimes we create really bad instinctive automated response. So that's where we're going to go first. So Riley, our first MMM, not controlling the expenditure of ammo / double taps.
Right. So I was just going to also preview just a little bit that we actually did this concept, this 8 muscle memory mistakes at one of our podcast episodes. And that was like a year ago. And I have no idea.
The batteries were falling out.
Oh, maybe that's the problem. So
it's okay.
We did this, about a year ago, I think, on the podcast. And so here we are presenting it to you. And, you know, it's been so long. We're going to be looking on some notes here, you know, so we remember what it was we talked about a year ago. And bear with me, too. I just arrived from Denver, Colorado, literally 2 hours ago. My wife and I just had our 5th kid 2.5 days ago. And it's been quite a ride getting here.
About 4 hours of sleep probably for Riley so far, yeah.
I'm pretty frazzled. So,
not controlling expenditure.
Is not controlling expenditure of rounds. Okay, so, you know, I was just at the range a few days ago testing out the new P365. That gun. It's kind of, you know, talk of the town right now. With a, you know, a micro compact 9mm pistol, right? So there's a double stack where everything else in this category is pretty much a single stack. So I'm at the range, I'm shooting it, and I was going through a lot of rounds because I'm trying to do about 500 plus some odd rounds of testing so we can determine, you know, for a review for our website if it's a reliable gun or not. And so I'm probably that one person there at the range at that moment that people around me are looking at me and going like, what's up with this dude? Because I was literally like grabbing mag. Because I just had to get through all these rounds like super quick and I didn't have a lot of time. But sometimes we see that from shooters at the range. You know, you're at the range and you got that guy down somewhere on the firing line and they're just like shooting like no tomorrow. You know, like they've got all the money and all the ammunition in the world and zero purpose to using that ammunition or that training opportunity. And so to me, like, now you mentioned double taps in there too. You know, sometimes people maybe are practicing this concept of double tap all the time. You know, double tap, double tap, double tap. Well, it's like, why are you doing that? And so I think what I I try to communicate to you, things that I see shooters make mistakes with at the range is not training with purpose, which, not controlling expenditure of rounds, just blazing away for no particular reason, or training certain things and not understanding why they're training those certain things. So that would be the first muscle memory mistake.
Think about how, I got one, thanks. Think about the danger of this. What happens if you're in a life-threatening situation, you're probably carrying a subcompact, let's say you have 7+1 rounds, 8 rounds, 10 rounds, 12 rounds, and the muscle memory you built at the range is to draw that gun and empty the mag.
Yep.
That's bad for lots of reasons. It's bad if you don't end your threat with that magazine and you've just wasted all that ammo. It's bad if it only took 3 rounds to stop the threat and you've just plugged in another 10. That's not going to be good in court, I promise, okay? It's also bad if you empty that mag into that attacker and now you have a second attacker, right? So when you are shooting at the range, when you're training, don't always fire the same number of rounds. Don't always say, I'm going to shoot 5, I'm going to stop. No, shoot 3, shoot 5, 6, 10, whatever, but you have to have enough cognition to stop and pause and think and decide if you still have a threat and not just willy-nilly empty the gun.
Totally. Good stuff.
All right, number 2, picking a gun off the table. So think about this. When you're at the range, how many of you go to a range where they won't let you draw from a holster? Yeah, more than half of you. So inevitably, what ends up happening? You grab that gun, you walk up to the table, you set it down, and how do you end up really drawing your gun? Picking it up off a table, right? Is that good muscle memory? That's a dangerous thing.
It could be.
It could be.
If you're practicing, pulling the gun out of the safe.
Okay.
At 3 in the morning, you got a home intruder,
So Riley's favorite hobby is correcting me, just so you know. So now that's a challenge though, because you might say, well, but the range won't let me do anything else, right? Well, there's a couple things to consider. One is, if for every time I pick that gun up off the table at the range, if at home, in dry fire with a training pistol or something, I do 50 additional draws out of a holster, then which is going to be my stronger muscle memory? The one out of the holster, right? So we have to at least do enough repetitions outside of the bad muscle memory we're creating at the range to combat that. The other potential solution is to not always have it in the same place on the table, so it doesn't ever really become muscle memory, right? If sometimes I set it here, then I set it over here, then I'm not really creating a really ingrained automated response if it's moving around. Additional thoughts, Riley?
Because the next one's a favorite of mine.
This is Riley's obsessive one. Drawing from a holster with purpose.
Yeah. So I just talked a minute ago about training with purpose, shooting with purpose, having a really good, end goal in mind as you're doing that. Same is true with drawing from a holster. Okay, so here's one thing that hopefully if you're really active with concealed carry, like I am, I carry on a daily basis. Now, we're probably not all able to do that. Maybe you work in a place, a business where your gun is not permitted or something. But hopefully you're carrying concealed as often as you possibly can, right? And so if you're really taking that seriously, hopefully maybe you're on a near daily basis, even if it's just for a few hours at a time, all right? So here's the cool thing about that. Every day you get 2 opportunities to handle that firearm, hopefully safely, okay, obeying all appropriate safety rules and so forth. You get 2 opportunities to handle that firearm. Those 2 opportunities add up over time. So every time you handle your firearm, handle it with purpose, and particularly, this would be what I would suggest. If you're done at the end of the day, and you are going to, and you're in a safe place where you're going to be pointing the gun in a safe direction, and you're getting ready to put the gun away for the at the end of the day, you're going to go to bed or whatever, I would recommend to you that every time you do that, that you go to the holster and you draw with purpose, the same way as you would if you were really needing to draw a gun. Okay, so don't have this lackadaisical attitude about, well, I'm done for the day, I'm going to go to bed, I'm going to take a shower, whatever it is, and you just sort of pick the gun out of the holster and stick it in the safe. No, face a safe direction, draw with purpose, and do that. You get that opportunity every day. And then when you're going out of the safe and maybe into the holster, that's another opportunity. You could even stop right there and do 5 repetitions of drawing from the holster and going back to the holster, and drawing from the holster and going back to the holster. And you can just take 30 seconds and get 5 repetitions really easily, just making sure that before you go out for the day, that draw stroke is super smooth.
Imagine the danger on this one, guys. Let's say you've been working really hard, you've been practicing your draw, But every single night, you get the gun out like this, and you stick it in the safe. What do you think is the muscle memory that will be most ingrained for you when you're life-threatening encounter and you draw the gun? Is it going to be the thing you've been practicing at the range, or is it going to be the thing you do every single night when you put the gun away? I hope it's not the latter, right? And that's the point, is draw with purpose every single time so the muscle memory is always on point, okay? Next one on our list here, Riley, recognizing a target, that cognition, target recognition. So here's the idea. We happen to be blessed in the sense that when we train with a gun, we always know that the target is a bad guy or a bad gal, BGs as I like to say. So when I go to the range and I put up my targets and I'm going to shoot at them, I don't have to think about whether or not they're BGs. I just assume they're all bad people and I can just shoot them all. But in a real life situation, do I want to have a muscle memory that all things in front of me are BGs? That's bad. That's scary, which means I have to build a certain amount of cognition into my system. I have to actually stop and ask myself, are those things threats? And we all know we need to do that. We're familiar with the safety rules. We've thought about that. But the muscle memory we're building at the range is nothing like the thing that we know we're supposed to do. The muscle memory we have from the range is, if it's downrange, shoot it. And that's problematic. So, how do you train this? Well, you can use multiple targets. You can put a big X through one, or make one green and one red. And you can come up and say, okay, don't shoot that one, that's not a threat, that one is. Some ranges may not let you always have multiple targets, they don't like that. But if you're in an outdoor range, you can probably get away with that. You can probably have 2, 3 targets. If you're at an indoor range, you can probably put them vertical. You can probably put one target here, one target here, one target there, and you can change that around.
Small scale,
yeah, just use smaller targets.
You can usually get 4 of those on a backer board. You know, at a range, you can do it that way as well.
So build the cognition of target recognition so that you're not willy-nilly just assuming everything in front of me is a target, shoot it all.
Can
Muscle memory is scary. Fire.
So you can have, this is probably not the best idea for a static range, but like you can use a little die or dice or whatever. Or if you just have some way of randomly, maybe even like a deck of cards, okay, that where you can get a random number each time you flip it over or you roll a dice, okay? You can put on your targets some numbers. Like if you put up a whole bunch of miniature targets and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you flip over, maybe you go through a deck of cards and you pick out all the aces through 6s, and you shuffle those all up and randomly flip those over, and then you flip one over and go, 3. And you need to look for, recognize the 3, and sometimes I'll mix, I won't go just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll go, 1, 6, 5, 4, 2, whatever, right? Just random numbers. And you flip over a card, find your target, shoot the target. You can also mix that up and even include a second deck of cards or another dice or something that gives you your number of shots that you're supposed to shoot. Okay, so you get one number, that tells you which target you're looking for, another number that tells you how many times to shoot it. And then you're mixing it up, keeping it interesting, and hopefully, avoiding some of those common muscle memory mistakes that we are talking about.
Yep. Next on our list here, Riley, scanning for multiple threats.
So, I'm actually doing a presentation tomorrow morning, which is the 9 lies about gunfights, busted by statistical analysis of justified saves.
It only took him a day to memorize that, don't worry.
That's quite a title. So basically, I'm going to be talking about 9 lies of gunfights, things that maybe a lot of people might tend to believe, but they're not actually true. And one of those is that we probably all have in our mind this picture that in that one day that I have to use my gun, it's just going to be this one bad guy. All right? But I can tell you, and you'll have to come to the presentation to get the exact numbers tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., but it's a substantial percentage of deadly force encounters where you have multiple threats. And those threats aren't always standing in the same spot. They might come from different locations. They might even attack you at different times. So the idea of making sure that you are not just forced into this static box of, I look here, I find my threat, I shoot here, I shoot my threat, and you don't do anything else, that's the muscle memory mistake that would be made here. So you need to get in the habit of identifying your threat, addressing that threat, shoot that threat, and then scan, right? So I would look a little bit left, a little bit right, and then I'm going to turn and look over my shoulder, and I'm going to turn and look over my other shoulder, okay? And if you have a training partner, this is a really good thing to do. You might have them stand behind you and at random times maybe hold up a hand, like with a number 3 or number 1, or a random object or a color or something. And your goal is to find those random numbers or colors or objects, identify them, and repeat that to your training buddy. That way you're getting that habit of shooting, addressing your threat, but then also scanning for potential other threats and doing that with purpose. Because sometimes you'll see guys or gals that'll just shoot and go, okay. And like that's also an example of doing something without doing it with purpose.
Yeah, the muscle memory doesn't do you any good if there's no cognition. If you just move the head as part of the motion, but you don't actually see anything, that's not helping you, right? So you actually have to recognize what's there. All right, remaining stationary. This is a huge muscle memory mistake, also forced upon us by liability at gun ranges.
Totally.
So what happens at the gun ranges, because, you know, insurance and money and stuff, they make you hold still, right? How many of you go to an indoor gun range where you're allowed to move across the firing line? No one, 0 of you, right? That's a problem, because inherently in a gunfight, who thinks that standing stationary is a real good plan? That's a horrible, like we all know that's a problem, right? But do we actually train for it? Are we building the habit when every time we go to the range and we stand there, we fire on our target, are we actually ingraining the muscle memory of just holding still? You bet you are. That's exactly what you're doing. And that's a problem. Now, we could talk about, well, in dry fire I could break the habit, right? For every 100 shots I fire at the live fire range, I can go home and I can do 500 where I'm moving. That's going to break the muscle memory. That's certainly an option. Another little trick that we learned from a friend named Brandon is when he's at an indoor range and he's not allowed to move, he'll still pick up his feet. So he'll have threat, he'll pick up his feet, and then he'll fire. So at least the feet are moving. Huh? Yeah, a little like he's doing a jig, like he's like an Irish folk dancer or something. It's really awkward looking. But you know, there may or may not be surveillance cameras at the range, and it'll be okay. It won't be on YouTube. So the thought here is that you can't get in the habit of just holding still and firing, because that's not going to go well for you in the gunfight.
You know, at an indoor range, you may be confined to a fairly small box, but I'll still make effort to, like, you could probably still move ever so slightly forward and back and ever so slightly side to side. Do it. Use every inch of that box. All right, and get into that habit. You are far safer, as I will talk about again in my presentation tomorrow.
Sales pitch.
Moving and shooting. Okay, you're a lot less likely to get hit by your bad guy if you're moving and shooting. Okay, so work that into your training. At the end of the day, one thing that I hope I would impress upon all of you with your personal training is many of you may not have the flexibility that we have sometimes in going to some of those outdoor ranges or private ranges where you can do a lot more. You have a lot more flexibility, but make sure you're doing a lot of dry fire practice at home, where you can do all those things. You can move around. You can do, maybe you can't draw from the holster at the range, but you can do a lot of dry fire practice at home, drawing out of that holster. You can do thousands of repetitions a month doing that. So you got to make sure you get a good balance of dry fire or dry practice and live fire practice.
And the vast majority of people in this industry will tell you that probably, if you do the math, about 80% of your training should probably be dry fire. About 80%. So for every 100 shots you fire, probably about 80 of those 100 should be at home in a training environment, in a practice environment. So give that a thought. If you're doing the math like, man, I'm not doing it, then you're probably building a lot of these muscle memory mistakes. We got 2 more. We're short on time. So we're going to move through these pretty quick. The next one is reholstering. What is the potential muscle memory mistake of reholstering?
I can think of lots of potential opportunities.
Lay it down on us, Bowman.
Here would be my biggest thing that I see from shooters is a tendency that when they go back to the holster, they go back really fast. So they try to go back to the holster just like they come out of the holster. That is completely backwards, okay? Yes, we want to get out of the holster quickly and consistently, but when it comes time to reholstering that gun, it should not be as fast as you can go. There is no race. You're not winning any medals by getting back to the holster. Have you ever seen Jerry Michelick or Chris Cerino or any of these top shooters, win championships, by getting back to the holster super fast? No, it's all about getting out of the holster, getting the shots on target. After that, you can take all day long. Even in a deadly force encounter, you have all day long to get back to that holster. Never reholster quickly. Take your time. If something feels a little bit out of place, if it's taking a little additional friction, more than usual, whatever, you should stop. Go slow, go smooth, stop if you feel uncomfortable, that's what I would say about reholstering muscle memory mistakes.
Yep. And last is our muscle memory mistakes. It's about reloading. Two examples of common mistakes we see. If you're a semi-automatic shooter, this is a common mistake. We see people go to do a reload, and you know that magazine you just bought, they're not cheap, you know, and hitting the concrete floor at the range, what if that breaks my mag? And so the tendency to just kind of gently drop that mag out and put it in a pocket or set it down. In a life-threatening encounter, can you imagine that muscle memory? Does that sound like a good idea to anybody? Like, I gotta do a reload. Stick that in my pocket, is that what you would do? No, you just let that sucker hit the ground, right? But in a training environment, you're inclined perhaps to have that muscle memory mistake of gently pulling it out. There was a news story that really rocked the industry. It's been many years ago now, but there was an incident where they found an officer who had died in a gunfight in California, and in his hand were empty shells from his revolver, right? He was emptying the shells into his hand because in the training environment, what do you think they were taught to do? The shells are expensive, we're going to reload those, so don't let them drop to the ground. That takes too long to pick up. When you empty your revolver, just drop them in your hand, we'll put them in the bucket. So this officer was performing a reload and literally had shells in his hand in the middle of a gunfight. Okay, well, we don't train officers that way anymore for that reason, but think about the way you're reloading. Am I doing it in such a way that's going to get me killed later? Make sure that we're not creating those bad habits.
And of course, as is typical, I'm going to correct you, you're talking, of course, about combat reloads as opposed to tactical reloads.
So sorry.
Now, different thoughts, different, you know.
If you only have
things.
one mag, that changes things.
Yeah, totally. So anyway, that's our 8 muscle memory mistakes. Hope you enjoyed that. And we got to hop off stage. And is Chris coming on next? Michelle? Awesome. You guys are in for a treat. So
Well, I would stay where you are. Thanks, everyone.
broadcast booth covering USCCA Expo 2018, and it is our pleasure to next interview the big man himself of United States Concealed Carry Association, Tim Schmidt. How you doing, sir?
Gentlemen, I'm doing fantastic. As you can imagine, I'm just ecstatic at the turnout so far, and just the amazing amount of booths and great organizations like yours who've decided to come. So I'm just tickled pink.
Yeah. People are really starting to roll in now.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah.
Your team is just so stellar too. I mean, we've been here since yesterday morning, and just a lot of hard work goes into this. And it's wonderful that people come, they get to enjoy it, but they don't see all the behind-the-scenes stuff that happens to make this happen.
Oh, no, that's so true. It's amazing how much time and energy goes into pulling something like this off. And I'm sure that some of my staff, they'll probably be listening to this, or maybe they're listening to it right now, and they're like, he doesn't even know half of what goes into it, which is probably true. But I mean, needless to say, I'm so grateful for all of the time and energy that goes into this. And, heck, I'm grateful for all the fantastic responsible gun owners who've traveled from some very, very far away to attend. So it's a lot of gratitude and excitement right here.
Yeah.
For sure.
Now, Tim, this is we're in Kentucky right now. Last year, talk a little bit about the history of the expo. I guess what I want to know, where did we start? Kind of how's it grown? Where we been?
No, that's a good question. So, 4 years ago, the very first one was in little old West Bend, Wisconsin. Yeah. And the reason it was in West Bend was because that's where we're located. Yeah. So we figured, hey, we're going to try this thing and let's do it in our own backyard. And actually had a fantastic attendance. Maybe we had 50 or 60 vendors, displaying all their holsters and accessories, and even a few gun companies showed up, the smaller ones. And it was a great success. So then we moved down to Atlanta, Georgia, and took it to the next level. And then last year was Fort Worth, Texas, and of course this year Louisville. So this has by far been the biggest, baddest, largest event that we've had. And I mean, already on Friday afternoon, I can't believe how many people are here.
Yeah, it just keeps getting bigger and better.
Yeah,
and it is. I mean, we had to kind of fight through a crowd just to get back into the booth here just a second ago. So it's pretty wild. Now, if I'm not mistaken, we tell me if I'm wrong, Tim, but is it official next year's location?
Yes, next year is going to be in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
In May.
I believe so, yeah. I'm not sure the exact dates,
but
somebody that's smarter than me will know that date.
Yeah. So there you have it, 2019 Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Be there or be square.
That's right. That's right. Well, this is really amazing. For those who have not been able to travel to one of these events yet, and know that obviously you guys go to some effort to move these around the country so that everybody gets an opportunity to come. So if you haven't had a chance to come yet, know that it's probably coming to you soon, and we really hope that you make the effort to make it.
Yeah. What was the inspiration behind the very first USCCA Expo?
Well, so as corny as this may sound, but if you ask a lot of the members, they'll agree that the USCCA is as much of a family as it is an association, and we just wanted to give people a chance to be able to connect with other fellow members, and we also consider the folks that run the USCCA as part of that family as well. And so it's so neat to see some of our members. They'll show up, they'll be like, "Man, I remember talking to you on the phone," and so it's really almost like this big family reunion. And I realize that sounds a little corny, but it's really what it is. And and we all stay in the same hotels for the weekend, and we're all trading stories about, hey, look at this cool gun I bought, or check out this new holster, this new company that's displaying. And so that's what we wanted to provide an outlet for our customers, our members, to meet one another and just further, have a great experience.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
And it's interesting too, because there's a handful of events out there for firearm owners, but this one really set the stage for an event dedicated to kind of self-defense and concealed carry and those things that really are what we're all about.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. There's all sorts of great shows. I mean, the NRA convention, or the annual meeting as they call it, that's a great thing to go to. But you're right. It's not strictly focused on self-defense. And that's why I think the USCCA Expo is so special, because, I mean, every single thing here has something to do with self-defense, self-protection. And quite frankly, if it's not here, it probably is not all that important in the self-defense world, because they're all here.
That's right.
Hopefully I didn't ruffle too many feathers there.
Don't worry, we'll hold off the hate mail. Yeah.
Well, and the event keeps growing year over year, right? Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit about? I mean, how many people did you have in attendance? Do you think at the first expo?
So the very first expo, I think there were about 1,500.
Yep.
And pretty much every year it's pretty much doubled in size. So 1,500, 3,000, 6,000. I believe this year we're expecting 10 to 11,000 people.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that's
Yeah.
pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And we picked the venue location based on the amount of current USCCA members we have in the area. Another important component, I'm sure you guys, this will make sense, but it's actually a little bit challenging to find a venue as well as a bunch of hotels that are completely fine with people carrying concealed.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, because it would be insane to have a concealed carry expo where you couldn't carry a gun.
Yeah.
Well, and certainly that's on your radar because we've now seen just in the last month or two Dallas. Looking at the NRA convention and kind of going, no, we're not sure we want you in our town.
Yeah, that's too bad. And it's really too bad because if you actually look at the facts and take the emotion out of it,
Yep.
I guarantee you that in a 300-mile radius, this is the safest building to be in.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. If you were to make a list of the cities that you could guarantee that the USCCA Expo will never be in, I mean, it's going to start with New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco.
Yep. It's pretty easy to come up with that list. Yeah, they don't want us there.
For sure.
Tim, I wanted to ask you. Last year you guys launched the new Elite membership, which, as far as I'm concerned, has been very well received. I see a lot of people are Elite members. In fact, here at the Expo, Elite members were able to get into the event an hour earlier before everybody else,
right?
Which is kind of a nice touch.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear. I don't think we've really talked to you since that launch. As I recall, we talked to you on day one of the launch.
Correct.
And
yeah,
so I'd love
right.
to hear,
Yep.
what's happened. What are you seeing? What's the reception like for Elite level?
Yep. So I mean, I'll start with the reason that we launched the Elite level is because essentially it came from our members, our customers. I mean, they were telling us, gosh, you guys, if you had a higher level, we would do that. And trust me, going back to our insurance partners and getting them to underwrite such a huge addition, I mean, that was a lot of work. Not to mention, significant financial risk on our part. But ultimately, the customer is what rules the day. And so we rolled that out, and I would say roughly about 23 to 24% of new members that come in are going for the Elite level. So that's perfect. That's kind of where you want it to be, and I'm super proud of the team that put all of that together, and it's been a great success.
Yeah. We've been. I upgraded my membership right away, and it's really been fun to kind of to receive those benefits and know that I'm covered in a huge way relative to before.
Over $2 million per incident.
That's a big deal.
You plan on getting a whole bunch of incidents, right?
Well, I mean,
that's the point of insurance, right?
We, none of us want that. I mean, I know you're joking, but that's a great point.
Right.
And we truly are pioneers in the liability insurance industry because nobody else does it that way. And it's exciting to be that pioneer and ultimately that's kind of part of the culture of the USCCA is we're always pushing the envelope, always trying to make it a better experience for our members. And
you are a legitimate insurance company now. I mean, if I understood correctly, when we were at your headquarters just a month or two ago, you've got folks at your office that are getting certified as...
Well, yep. So one of the things as the USCCA has gotten larger, we've certainly gotten a lot more scrutiny. So every single state in the country, in our country, has their own individual insurance commissions and their own individual insurance regulations. Now, it's kind of like concealed carry permits. I mean, they're all similar, but nonetheless, they're all each individual entities. And so it's really important to us to be on the cutting edge in terms of compliance, right? And so we are going to the end of the earth to make sure that we're compliant in every single state. To the extent that because we actually don't sell individual insurance policies, we technically don't need to be certified insurance agents. We simply sell a membership that has an insurance benefit. However, every single one of our member service agents is certified to sell insurance in every state of the country.
Right.
Yeah.
All 50 states.
Right. And that's what I was trying to get at, which I think is remarkable. The effort you're going to encourage, that from your employees. But not only that, I mean, you got an award-winning customer service team.
Yes, we do.
And, I mean, they're fantastic.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, when I give tours of our headquarters, of the USCCA headquarters in West Bend, Wisconsin, my favorite part, now, for the folks of you, for the USCCA employees who aren't in this department, I apologize. But my favorite part to take people through is our member service area. I mean, it's just this giant open area. of literally over 100 people that all they're doing is they're taking phone calls, they're responding to emails, they're responding to chats, they're responding to social media posts, and they're all full-time employees. They're all pro-Second Amendment, pro-gun people. They live right in West Bend, Wisconsin, and it's not like you're talking to somebody in India who's never touched a gun in their life. And I'll tell you, if you want to get the heartbeat, the pulse of the USCCA, you just walk through that room, and it's just I just gave myself goosebumps.
Yeah, no, and I know exactly what you're getting at, because I think the first time we walked into your new headquarters there, seeing what you've put together was, frankly, it was way more awesome than I expected. And I hate to not give you credit, but I mean, we walked in, it was just like,
it was inspiring.
Wow, like this is real, something special, that's for sure.
Oh wow, I'm glad you felt that way.
And you've got also, I mean, so there's your core customer service people, obviously, right? One thing I'm sure that would be very reassuring to someone that's evaluating whether to purchase a membership or not would be knowing what to expect if they are, heaven forbid, in that situation where they've just had to draw or use their gun. What can they expect when they call that emergency hotline? And you've got what is your critical incident team?
Critical response team.
Yep. So that's a great question, because so many people, they're concerned about that, but they don't ever want to experience it. Right. But unfortunately, every once in a while it does happen, and more so than you'd think. But literally, it's just like we talk about, where it's literally one phone number and then everything is taken care of. So one of our critical response team members will take that call. So you're not going to be on hold. You're not going to be put in. There's no press one.
It's like the bat phone.
It literally is. It's like
the
bat phone, and they will be on the phone with one of our almost 900 pro-Second Amendment criminal and civil defense attorneys all across the country. About 500 of those same attorneys, or actually I think it's closer to 600, are also on call 24/7. So they're going to set you up with the attorney. Of course, if you need one. If you already have your own attorney, that's fine. Then they're going to, if you're in a situation where you've already been incarcerated and there's going to be a bail hearing, we've got bail bondsmen in every single state. I mean,
wow.
There's a huge team of people that move into action for that member that has to make that phone call.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, if you're not already running with the bat phone, terminology, I'm just saying that would work really well. I think you should start calling it the bat phone.
You know what? I like that, Jacob.
Yeah, it's the bat phone. It's like it's ringing. Like grab it and let's get this game on. Yeah, that's how it is.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's really exciting. So Tim, you guys are always working on tons of new stuff. We're going to, later throughout the show, we're going to talk to some other people that are working with you guys, a couple of your members of your team, some partners. But we would love to hear if there's anything you want to share about things that are upcoming, things that people can expect from the USCCA. Sure.
Well, so one of the things that I've committed to in terms of a business strategy, an association strategy, is to always come up with a bigger, better, badder experience for our customers. And when I say that, I mean just continual improvement. I mean, continually improving your product or the way your customers experience is really one of the ultimate business strategies. So every single June of every single year, we completely revamp the Self-Defense Shield benefits. So that'll be coming out. Obviously, it's not June yet, but we're on the way there.
Getting close.
And gosh, I mean, we've also really invested a lot of time and energy and money into our self-defense training instructor curriculum. So we're coming up with all sorts of new curriculums. Ultimately, what these curriculums do is they support our over 2,000 instructors and ultimately support their business because it gives them more good training and classes to teach.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And me and Riley are among those 2,000 now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, instructors and training counselors.
That's right. We got that done.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we do have a small group of essentially the elite of our training instructors, which you guys are, the training counselors, and I certainly appreciate you guys being part of that.
Yeah, so
it is our honor.
Anyone who's watching, if it's really easy to go to the USCCA website. You can really quickly look for instructors near you. If you want to become an instructor, it's also really easy on that website to look and find training counselors near you, and you can schedule those classes and get engaged.
I've already gotten phone calls from people.
I've had people stop by the booth who wanted to want to become instructors.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's the way it's supposed to work.
I was shocked. I was like, well, I guess we're up on the website already.
I guess we better start teaching. I just barely got that done. Yeah. So the demand is there.
That's great.
Good.
That's great.
So that's exciting, Tim. I'm glad to hear that, because I think looking at the curriculums out there, and this is something that we deal with as a company as well. People probably for a long time we struggle with really two problems. One problem is that we have to convince the consumer that they need more training than what the government says, right? Yeah. And then the second problem is we actually have to have a product to give those people.
Right.
When they say, okay, yeah, you're right, I guess I'd love to have more instruction now, then we have to say, oh, you're on board? Okay, then here.
Yeah.
Right, and we have to have something to give them.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point, and ultimately that's what we're trying to do, and it's a never-ending mission, because, I mean, as a responsibly armed citizen, you really never should stop learning, right? I mean, you need to continue to train, continue to educate yourself, and I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So it's a lifestyle. It's not something you just press the button once and you're done.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and I certainly think that's part. I mean, whether this is true or not, but the way I see it, that would seem to be part of the goal of having an expo like this, bringing together this many like-minded people to just further educate, inspire, help, them be more responsible American gun owners.
Exactamundo.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Game on.
Have you had much chance to walk the floor so far?
You know, we rolled in a couple hours ago, and I've had a chance to talk to a few booths, but I'm blown away at the new number of booths. I heard that there's about 160 different companies that are represented here, and gosh, I think last year there was maybe just 100. So
that's huge.
You know,
that's a big deal.
Do a little math. That's 60% more, or whatever, some amount more.
Sure.
Anything that you've walked by that you've just kind of thought to yourself, I got to go back and check that out, or hey, that's really cool, or?
Well, the first thing that jumped out at me is that Ruger has just a fantastic booth, and I mean, it's just great to see a big, awesome company like them, and then Sig as well. Sig's got a great booth. In terms of like other cool accessories, I haven't had a chance to really dig in, but I've seen things like, wait a second, I've never seen that product before, and that thing looks really cool. So I'm hopefully I'll have a chance to check all of them out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are tuning in, certainly know that if you're watching right now, make sure you come back, because we're going to be streaming live video content all weekend long. So if you have to run off and go pick up the kid from school or something, make sure you come back, because we're going to keep on going.
Absolutely.
Cool.
So, Tim, I know you're a busy guy.
Yeah.
And I think we'll be connecting again here soon. So, tomorrow, I think.
Sounds good. Jacob Riley, guys, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Great interview.
Thank you.
Perfect.
All right, stay tuned, guys. We'll be back here soon with another interview. For now, we'll pipe in some videos so you can kind of see the crowds here, and we'll be right back with you.
All right. Hey, it's Riley, and I'm back here. We're live again at the USCCA Expo 2018. We just came off a few minutes ago with an interview with Tim Schmidt, and it is now my pleasure and honor to have Chris and Michelle Cerino. And, I mean, this is a power couple if I think I ever saw one. So I'm just so pleased to have you here on the broadcast stage with me.
Sometimes I get nervous. I don't know what to do with my hands.
Well, those hands are meant for shooting.
With my hands. Thanks for having us. We're really glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you for being a part of this. So I've certainly probably been following you. Well, you don't follow me, but I've been following you for a few years. I remember when I was just starting to get really active as a firearms instructor, Top Shot was a big thing at the time, and I loved that show.
Everybody loves it.
Yeah.
Everybody loved it.
What was not to like about Top Shot? And of course, you were a competitor and did very well.
I was on it twice.
You have that distinction.
Yeah, I came on it.
Yep.
What's really cool for me about Top Shot, I can just say this. This is my thing. I got to be on Top Shot not just once, but I got to do it twice. And since I came in second place, I was in every challenge in every episode for 2 seasons.
Right.
I mean, think about how cool that is, because not people would like to just do some of it. I did 2 whole seasons. I made it to the end.
Yep.
You know,
right.
I didn't have to win. I was a winner.
Yeah.
Although,
we could have used the money.
Yeah, that's all right, though.
And, of course, your lovely wife, Michelle. Wife, mother, school teacher.
Yeah.
Writer. Managing editor of Women's
Outdoor News.
Mm-hmm. Which is super cool as well.
Thanks.
So I'm going to pick your brain a little bit here in just a minute about, maybe, what your thoughts are and your passion as it relates to getting women into this industry and into the shooting sports. So, Chris, what was your favorite challenge out of everything that you saw on Top Shot? 2 seasons.
I don't know that I have I liked the bar room scene where you choose your shot. They'd say, okay, I like beer mugs at 50 yards with the Henry lever action, whatever.
There was some crazy stuff there occasionally.
Yeah, that was cool. I mean, but I wanted to, when we did the spinning wheel one and I drilled the bullseye with the revolver, that was an accident, just so you know. Not everybody knows that, but it was an accident. The gun went off. I wasn't ready, but hey, they always say it's supposed to be a surprise break. And you spun previously to see what position they were going to crank you to make your shot. When I got like 7 o'clock, I was like, yes. And everybody said, why are you so excited, man? It's going to be really hard. And I said, because I want to shoot upside down. I went to Top Shot because I wanted to be in a challenge. So it was all good for me.
Yep. That's awesome. Out of those 2 seasons and all the many challenges, of course, you're shooting against some world-class talent. Any lessons, anything that you learned from any of that?
Yeah, I learned how to be a competitor because you have to think about winning. Because season 1, I never thought about winning.
You never competed before that.
Yeah, I never really competed. I didn't understand, about moving fast and strategy and stuff like that. But I learned a lot about competition and strategy and, trying to pre-program your mind to be ready. Because before that, during that whole thing, I would just sit and talk and yuck it up, and they'd be like, hey, Cerino, you're up. And I'm like, hey, I'll finish that story in a second. And then I'd run up there and I'd shoot just because it was like fun to me.
Yep.
And then I'd go back to telling my story. And then sometimes that would screw me up. But I learned a lot about competing.
What I learned about you being on Top Shot was don't let you hang around with Ian Harrison alone outside of Top Shot. That's all. Just throwing it out there.
Ian and I are good friends, and we have great times in various locations throughout the country from time to time.
That's all anybody needs to know.
Now, Chris, I know that unless something's changed, you're also director of training for Hudson Manufacturing.
No,
it has changed.
That has changed. Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. When I had cancer last year, I had a moment of clarity. It was somewhere around February, and chemo was kind of running down. I felt better.
Yep.
And I just told them, I said, listen, I can't keep taking your money. You guys weren't ready. They didn't have guns yet. And I just felt bad working for them, and they supported me 110%. I mean, they stuck with us, and they would have.
I've had many conversations with Cy about some of that, and
I told them, I said, listen, I can't keep taking your money, and I don't know when I'm going to be better. I just didn't know. So I quit. and I haven't been formally employed, which is odd for me because despite everything we do, I haven't had like a real job for over a year now. But I'm healthy, and that's what's important.
Yeah, and you look great.
Thanks. I feel good.
Yeah,
I feel good.
I remember when they first, were at that. I think it was their first SHOT Show as well. Just first announcing the H9, and they had that cardboard cutout of you. Where's Cerino? And I saw that thing all over the place, and
it did.
I thought that was pretty
Apparently
cool.
it made it quite a few places. Very funny. Even ended up in a couple of beds.
That's great. I think that's just an amazing, innovative platform. I've enjoyed shooting it, and I imagine you got one personally?
No, I don't have mine yet. But I did when we were at SHOT Show. We both shot it, and I really liked it. I shot the lightweight one because I don't want to take up. Yeah, I don't want to take up a bunch of people's time. But I went right after that. I shot it, and you shot it too. What did you think about it?
I liked it. Well, plus we were at the shop and shot the other one too.
Oh yeah, we were down in Texas back in November, and we shot them down there in the shop as well. So we got to get a little tour, and I mean it's really moving along.
Yeah,
really moving along.
Cool stuff. I was super impressed with the H9A. So I know you the two of you are instructors and work with a lot of different folks. Obviously,
we do.
I mean, so tell me, like, what are some of your big things, big philosophies, beliefs, whatever it is, that when you take someone that first comes to you for training, what do you try to impart on them?
Gosh, just because I like something doesn't mean they have to like it. I mean, we know that. We always give people their own options. I mean, just because I dislike something doesn't mean it's not right for you.
Yep.
And we have three main things that we teach too, I would say. And a lot of people might poo-poo it and call it basic, but you know what? You can't build a solid house without a good foundation, and gear manipulation skills, weapon manipulation skills, fundamentals of marksmanship. And if you're solid in those three things to a point where you can kind of go on autopilot, kind of like driving a car. It's like you can drive any car. Some are better to drive, easier to drive.
Yeah.
You can drive any car, but you don't really have to think about it to drive because all you're doing is moving through the streets. And if you have that knowledge and that ability, what do you think?
You should be able to pick up any gun and shoot it.
Yeah.
And once you learn all that, and it seems a lot of people want the fast ninja classes where we're going to do this and spin upside down or do all that, but you have to have those basics, those fundamentals first, and that's where a lot of people
lack
or they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, they really don't know what they don't know. There's those 4 levels of competence. You got unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, where you don't even know what you don't know, and then all of a sudden, hey, I didn't even know that existed. And then you get conscious competence and then unconscious competence. Most people operate somewhere around conscious competence, where if they think about it, they can do it really well, or they can do it kind of good. Very few people, because their basics, their foundation is not solid, their weapon manipulation, their skills, they never make it to unconscious competence, where they don't have to think, they can just worry about solving the problem. I mean, hey, there's target there, shoot it. They're still thinking about how to do different things, get the gun out, reload it,
Well, and that's why once we do get them trained up and stuff, and they're like, well, now what do I do next or whatever, we encourage people to go out and compete, do some competition, because that is how you vet your skills. That's how you prove, yes, I can manipulate my gear. Yes, I can, I can work under stress. You got the stress of time and everybody watching you or whatever is your stressor during a competition. And that's a great way to say, yeah, I can do this. I can do what I've learned.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in law enforcement 26 years, and I mean, of course, I've drawn guns on people, pointed them at people, been a SWAT guy, but I've never been in a shooting.
For you, it was just a job. Up to that point.
Is it because is it that I wasn't in a shooting because I'm good and I got the drop on people?
Sure.
Did I present something to them that caused them not to try to take me on? I don't know. But not everybody in the world, not everybody in this room can be involved in a shooting, so you're not going to get that kind of practice. But through competition, time is your enemy. Stress is your enemy.
Yeah.
Ammo management, can you make the shots under stress and at speed? That's the best we're going to get.
Yep, so true. Tell me about your work with female shooters.
I try to really get involved in the different women's groups, Girl in a Gun, the Well-Armed Woman. I've gone to their conferences and stuff just to get a real feel for what the ladies are experiencing and how things go at these events. And the female shooters are very passionate about what they do. They want to get the training, they want to learn, but they like to do it together. And I think a lot of guys would be like, oh, I'll just go to the range or I'll just practice or whatever. But women, if your friend's doing it with you, it helps a lot if you can bring somebody along.
Right.
And that's where I see the women's groups going. That's why they're growing so much, because they enjoy being together. It's a social part.
The all-girls classes are some of our most fun.
Yeah.
Because it's a giggle fest.
And they're so honest, and they'll ask questions.
Yeah.
And I love it. And when people need to start learning, which I think it's in the industry is accepting it, is if the mom starts shooting, or if the girlfriend or if the wife starts shooting, everybody else follows along. I mean, I know there's a lot of men, they're like, how can I get my wife to shoot? I'm like, you can't.
Yep.
But there might be another female out there that can say, hey, you want to come with me?
Yep. Now, I might actually have the distinction of the one man in the world, maybe she's watching, I don't know, where his wife actually likes to go on a shooting date with me and mostly listens to me. But I like to listen to her too. So I think we have a pretty good working relationship there. But I totally get that, by the way, because I see that as well, right? Where it's usually it goes disastrously wrong when you take, a guy and, his wife or girlfriend or whatever, and like, hey, we're going to show you how to do this, and it just doesn't go over that well.
When we teach a class, we had two couples come, and I said, we're going to split up.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how we set it up. And boy, those guys, they kept kind of looking.
When we get people that are together, we almost always split them up, at least for the first day. And it's not to be cruel. It's just to keep him from screwing with her.
Well, and the women are usually, on the side, the women are like, thank you for doing that. But they would never say that, in front of him. Yeah.
They really do.
I so believe it. I see it. That's wonderful. What do you see? I mean, you touched on the social aspect, and obviously having kind of this social giggle fest.
We can't call it a giggle, but yeah, it is fun. It's fun.
Beyond that, I mean, what do you see as sometimes like? Is there a common thread that you see with women shooters that is kind of holding them back? And how would you respond to that, or what would you say to someone if someone's watching right now and they're just like that one little hump that they're just struggling to get over?
So, when it comes to competitions, and I was thrown right into it. I was thrown into, you're going to start shooting, and I shot with, like, my first squad, I think, had Jerry Mitchell on it.
Oh, geez.
So, it's like, Jerry and Kate's like, really, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
So, I do shoot, and I'm not beholden to anybody. I'm being honest. Like, a Girl in a Gun has their ladies 3-gun match, and it is great because it's not an easy match it's a hard match.
Still a match.
Yeah, it's a hard match, but it's all women, and when women shoot and compete, they might, like, one lady was just thrilled to get, like, I know I'm thrilled on some of these stages. Thank God I made it through it.
She didn't time out,
I didn't time out, and there's women, and they you did it. They support you and all that, and you can't come off with a poopy face. No poopy faces when you're shooting. You come off and you're like, I did something I wanted to accomplish. So that helps. And then from there, some of them now move on and they'll go shoot other matches. Yeah. I think they're just afraid. I really do.
But once you get that first exposure, you're probably
and you have to shoot.
Yeah?
You have to shoot for yourself. Yeah. You can't be shooting for anybody else.
It's a matter of getting somebody else to do it with you. And since women are harder to find to pair up with to do that stuff, I'd imagine that's part of the problem. But like Michelle has so many great friends that are women that love to shoot way more than her, but they love more than anything being together.
Yeah.
And if they lived closer together, they would shoot more.
Yeah.
I believe that you guys would. If you guys were together, you guys would be like, we're going to do this. We're going to go to Tuesday Night Steel or whatever, because it would be part of it. Because then it would go from there to, let's go get a pizza or Chinese food, because it becomes a social event like it is for us, and we go out and, hey, let's go get a beer now. Let's go do that.
But and also, this just popped in my head. I'm not trying to be real negative here, but there's some not very good instructors, and if women have a bad experience, they're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not, let me go try somebody
Honey,
else.
you're going to have to aim up here to hit it down here.
I mean, you.
Right.
I mean,
We've heard it. We've seen it.
Totally.
there's-
Oh, your sights are just off.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sets you up for failure, for a terrible experience for sure. You know, so I really appreciate what you've said there, and you know, what I would hope someone would hear from this is, from what I've witnessed, especially in the 3-gun world, but I think just any of the competitive shooting, you know, parts of the world, it is a special community. Like,
yes,
people,
yes.
you know, love to get together. They love to shoot. They love to compete, have a good time. You know, I don't see a lot of bad mouthing or trash talking. I mean, sometimes in jest and for fun, you know, amongst friends. But it's just, we're there to have fun, shoot, and have a great time.
And I do what's in your range bag. I interview people every month.
She writes that for Shooting Sports USA.
And what I get from everybody that I write about, they answer certain questions, and they always say, come to a match, just show up. People will give you gear.
Oh, totally.
And that is 100% true.
People will take care of you.
Just here, you need something, here you go.
We've lost our guns, you know, traveling. They get, you know, delayed. They get lost in the mail, whatever happens. I tell you what, people are always like, oh, I've got a shotgun, I've got ammo, and I've got this. I mean, and that stuff's expensive. And people just dole it out, and we don't hesitate to do the same.
Yeah.
You know, it's just,
or I've seen it too, where someone, maybe they're shipping their ammo and it doesn't show up, and people are just pulling out of their bags.
Yep.
You know, here's 50 rounds here, here's 100 rounds, and before you know it, they've got all the ammo they need for that match.
If you have any interest in it, you just got to go do it.
Yep.
Yeah, you
and
really
find
do.
the discipline that you enjoy too. That's
even to
another
go out
part.
and watch. Just
Yeah,
go
we'll
watch.
go out and watch
so go out
first,
and watch
yeah.
and ask questions, for God's sakes, people. Ask questions. People just, they're afraid to ask questions, they're afraid to talk to people. And, and one of the things about us is we try to make ourselves at matches, and it's probably why we're not very good either, is we try to make ourselves really available. I mean, we talk to everybody. We help everybody. We want to be approachable.
Yep.
Because we want people to come up to us and say, man, what kind of shotgun is that? Or, man, you really shoot that pistol well. What is that? Or do you have a preference on ammo? Whatever's cheapest, buddy. You know.
Or people will say, well, if I just had the rifle, or if I'm like, guess what? We got it.
Yep.
We had a friend that wanted to start shooting. We said, come on in our basement, buddy.
Yep.
And just started digging stuff out. He was all set up to shoot 3-gun.
Yeah.
And he loves it.
It's awesome. So get out there and just try it.
Just do it.
Good advice right there. You just heard it from the mom, Michelle Cerino. I love our mom shooters. My wife, by the way, just 2.5 days ago, we had our 5th child. So,
5th?
Yeah.
Our kids are 19 and 21.
Yeah, I mean,
so it's not like they're little.
We're actually,
0 to 11. So we're trying to catch up there.
We're pretty young, and we're practically, I mean, we're empty nesters. And it
Almost. What?
almost. It's so cool to have that freedom. I mean, even just coming here this weekend, it's the first time I don't think we've had anybody traveling in the back seat for a while. It's just quiet.
Nice. Well, appreciate you and your time so much for joining me today. Hope you enjoy the rest of the expo. And
I'm excited.
Yeah, we'll be on the stage again tomorrow. Michelle's got lady stuff. It's going to be great fun. I'm excited. I love it. Like, I love a crowd, and these are a crowd of great people.
Seriously, I'm just super impressed with how many people have rolled in here in a short amount of time. So, great. Thank you so much, you two.
Thanks a lot.
Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Hey, and we're back here at the broadcast booth at the USCCA Expo, and I have the distinct pleasure of being surrounded by two pretty cool dudes. We got Rob Beckman, who is actually our official interview guest, I guess, for this segment, and Matthew Marister joining us for his first segment here live at the show. And Matthew now is the producer of the Concealed Carry podcast. He's an instructor in the concealedcarry.com instructor network in the Columbus area. And then we've got on the other side, the other Ohio guy, Rob Beckman, instructing. You teach in Cincinnati a little bit, right? But you're also
in the Cincinnati area, but we're technically teaching Indiana, which is like 100
like
feet over the state line.
100 feet over the state line, that's right. Yeah, so anyway, I'm feeling, like Buckeye proud or something, So, guys, I wanted to give you a little preview. Coming up here, the rest of the schedule for the rest of today, we've got John Correa. He's going to be on with me and Matthew at 5:30 Eastern time. So we'll look forward to picking John's brains. He's well known as the dude that does active self-protection and all the deadly force videos and analysis that he's well known for. We got Joe Kalil coming up at 6 p.m. Eastern. We got wrapping up the day will be Scott Wagner at 6:30. So just wanted to give you a little preview on the upcoming schedule. And then we got a full schedule, like literally full. There's not a single opening tomorrow at all. And so we'll look forward to seeing you all back here again tomorrow. Coverage starts at 9 a.m. Eastern time. So that'll be really great. So it's my pleasure, like I said, an honor to have Rob here. Rob, you are the owner of American Defense Training.
Correct.
Yep. And so give us just a quick rundown of your background as an instructor, whatever it is that you typically would share for a bio, so folks have a sense of who you are and what you do.
I run American Defense Training in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is in the southwest corner. We cover the southeast part of Indiana as well as northern Kentucky. We specialize in doing NRA training as well as United States Concealed Carry training. I'm a training counselor in both, so I not only teach the student classes, but also go along and teach the instructor classes too. And the one thing that I like to go along and pass along to my students is, especially the instructors, is to understand the people that we're training are the people that are going to be sitting next to you in church, people that are going to be sitting next to you or standing in the Walmart checkout line, those types of things. And you want to instill in them the best possible knowledge because you don't want to worry about them if they're standing behind your family or standing behind you thinking, okay, does this person know what they're doing? You want to have that confidence saying they know what they're doing and I don't have to worry about, them accidentally shooting me and things like that. The other thing I get into a lot on is the psychology of shooting. When you start talking about tunnel vision, when you start talking about auditory exclusion, all those different factors that come in when you're actually trying to go along and in a high-stress situation, which shootings would be a high stress of understanding what's going to happen. It's not a matter of not having those kind of physiology reactions, but it's actually going along and learning how to deal with them. What's the difference between a civilian versus SEAL Team 6 when it comes to handling that? It's that they've trained and learned how to deal with those physiology changes, the adrenaline, the tunnel vision, all those types of things in a more productive manner. And that's where, when I put people through training, try to go along and make sure they get some stress behind them and understand that, hey, you just went along, shot a perfect bullseye, but you saw nothing else going on around you. That could mean that somebody could walk up behind you, walk up from the side of you. It could mean that your wife is walking up and all of a sudden you didn't realize that she's behind you. It's not just bad guys. It's trying to be aware of everything that's around you because, you add auditory exclusion into it, and what happens? All of a sudden, you can't even hear the kids screaming because you're so focused on the target. But they're trying to scream and tell you something else is happening. And that's where we go through a lot of exercises and making sure people learn how to break those kind of the physiology effects and be more aware of looking around and seeing what's happening in their surroundings.
Yeah, that's a really great point because, just a little bit ago I was on the demo stage here at the show talking about muscle memory mistakes, and one of the things I was talking about was, doing the scan, like post engagement scan, and how I think a muscle memory mistake is doing that, without purpose. To where you see some shooters, they do their shooting, and as soon as they're done, they're Okay, and like it should be done with purpose. You should be, trying to process information, looking for details, understanding what, is going on in your surroundings. And I love the point that you brought up, that it's not just scanning for additional threats, but scanning for the good guys as well. And like your wife coming up alongside you or behind you, and you are so focused. You just shot this dude, tunnel vision focused, and all of a sudden, and she grabs you, and you don't know, you're hyped up. So that's a really great point.
One of the things I do to really kind of drive that home is I'll go along and pick something out that's behind them.
Yeah.
You ask them which window on the car is down. Ask them what color something is. A chair that we set out on the range. Just ask them something very benign. But what that forces them to do after you do it a couple times is they now have to start scanning, and they're not just looking. Okay, I've looked. It's like I'm looking. I'm counting the number of chairs that are there. I'm going along and seeing what people are doing, which is what you need to do to process things properly.
Yeah. And
you go along like, okay, I'm good. Now I can go along and, change what I'm doing. I check on the family, do those, but I've processed the area around me. I'm not going to have a surprise.
Yeah. I do the same thing. So that's a really great drill. That's a great tip that you've just provided to our viewers. Matthew, you were a cop, so you I think you understand a thing or two about this kind of concept.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to ask you one question when you were talking about when you teach your students and you put them through this drill where you ask them a color or something like that. Do you find that initially their mind's blown? Like, I had no idea what color that was, or I didn't even realize that I should be looking around. And then after you start doing this drill, they start picking up on that, and it kind of clicks for them, and they start realizing now why they're doing that, rather than, okay, I saw this on TV, I saw I should look around, but now I actually realize why, and it starts to make sense to them.
It's one of the things, and we've talked about before, I've been on the podcast, we train our muscles to be able to shoot, and shoot effectively. But we also have to take the next step of training our minds so we can go along and actively be able to make judgment calls and things like that. We're going to be amped up more than we've ever been amped up before. But if we've
the cognitive aspect.
Here. Yeah, and if we go along, we can actually go along, okay, what's that person wearing, where are their hands at, what's going on in that car, and start slicing the picture up. All of a sudden, people start learning to look more than what's around. And normally what happens when we're teaching classes, we're telling people to look, and you get that little shoulder look over, and it's like, okay, who saw how many fingers I was holding up? And they're like, I didn't see that. Okay, now I got to turn even more. And then you go along, and I get my hands folded, and they're like, your hands are folded. It's like, no, I was going to ask you where the chair was. And they're like, forgot that. It's like, don't think of what you're going to, don't expect something. Figure out what's there and process it for what's there.
Yeah.
Because again, we're trying to train the psychological part for them, so they've got the shooting down. Most of the people that come to these advanced classes can't shoot. That's why they're there. But they want to be pushed a little bit further to train their psychological side of it, so they can be more effective if they do come to that deadly force encounter.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it really is a different aspect of shooting, particularly with the self-defense, context in mind. Not just the shooting capability or skills, but also that cognitive aspect. Now, my good buddy Mark Pasamanik really introduced to me the idea of the cognitive stack, and the way he describes it. When we had him on the podcast to talk about that a number of episodes ago, the way he describes that is, the average human can process maybe 3 or 4 things at a time, right, cognitively. Okay, and that's even a little bit of an ask, because, think about it. And a great example is driving, okay? So you're driving, you're thinking about what's in front of you, you're checking your mirrors periodically, you're thinking about, okay, apply, gas, use the brake, turn on the signal, whatever, and then you start throwing into the mix using the cell phone, touching the radio, dealing with a crying baby in the back or something, and now you're overloading that cognitive stack, and something has to force its way out.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, and how many times do you my favorite drills are the shooting drills that require you to think.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That like really test you as far as processing information, and how often when you're setting somebody up, you're giving them a stressful drill to shoot, and you want them to do something or execute something, and they completely forget. I mean, you hold up, hey, how many fingers am I holding up? And, oh, I didn't even see that.
Or not just that they miscount how many rounds they were supposed to fire for that drill.
Yes.
They're like,
totally.
oh, I thought you said four rounds, and you're like, no, that was the drill before. This drill you're shooting 2 rounds, and they're like, oh, I totally forgot how many. And it's a simple thing, but they're overloading themselves.
Yep.
But if you think about it, how can you increase the ability or your mind's ability to handle more things is by exposure, right? Like you use the analogy to the car. Anybody who's new to driving, they're overwhelmed, right? Like
they're thinking about every little thing.
Right. But once you've done it a long time and certain things become natural, now you can turn the radio on. And
you can prioritize.
You can do that and still drive and still look at the upcoming sign where you're going to exit, right? But at first, you got to turn down the radio so you can read that sign. You got to, everything has to be just right because you get overwhelmed easier. So the more you can expose these people to more cognitive aspects of shooting rather than just the mechanical part, it helps.
It's sort of it's kind of like stress inoculation.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a way, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen the command targets? Where you've got the 1 through 6 and then different shapes and different colors?
Yeah, I love those targets.
We go along and we not only have people shoot the colors and the numbers, but then we start doing math with them.
Yep.
We start going along and saying 10.
Yep.
And they go along the first time, they're like, there's no 10. It's like, well, you've got to figure out how to make 10.
Yep,
is it
exactly.
4 and 6, 2 5s, a 3 and a 7? Or is it how do you make it up?
I love that example because you're giving them a math problem that they have to solve their own way. That's way harder than saying 2 plus 4 and look for the 6.
Well, and it's very similar to any kind of deadly force encounter. Do you stand and fight? Do you exit? Do you go along, go behind this cover? Do you seek this kind of concealment? At what point do you go along, draw versus going along and comply? And that's where you're trying to get the mind to go along and not freeze up, but actually go along and keep processing. And that's where a lot of people come out of, we'll shoot for 4 or 5 hours, and they'll be like, I'm just exhausted. It's like, yeah, because we're taking the mind and we're working through all these cycles and not just sitting there pulling triggers and hitting bullseyes all the time. We're trying to go along and say, okay, do this and go along, watch on the command target. We'll actually go along and tell them, shoot it as many times as it takes to hit the target. Yep. And that's where they realize, too, it's not just a boom, boom. It's a boom, do I have a hit or not? And really get people to focus on making sure they're accurate because accuracy is going to count. The first person to hit the target accurately is probably going to be the person that's going to win, without a doubt.
Well, that's why shooting and assessing is so critical, right? Because which you have to do in a real life encounter because you don't just shoot blindly. You got to shoot and then assess. Do I keep shooting or not? So yeah, what you're touching on there is fantastic. I want to explore this idea just a little bit further, the idea of sort of inoculating a shooter to be able to handle, more stress or more inputs. And so we've given some examples of maybe some of the different drills or things that are done, but how do you really dig deep on this and with your more advanced students?
Well, one of the things that I make sure of is that we don't overload them too far because failure can be a really bad thing to go along and think, okay, I just can't do it. So I start very slow, and then as we start amping it up, when you think about it, we do it in the advanced classes, we start very basic in doing the command targets. Then we start going along and introducing them to scan the area, and then we also go along and start adding movement into it. So many times when we're in a basic concealed carry class, we're always shooting at a basic target. We're very square with it. We do what we have set up as a barrel drill, and we actually go along and walk a figure 8 between the barrels. And what that really allows me to do, and I like teaching the instructors this because it gives them a little bit of knowledge what's going on behind the scenes. No matter what skill level the shooter is, you can go along and challenge them in that drill. Yep. If you got somebody who's very sharp, very quick on a draw, you can go along, put them to where they're 2 feet away from the target, to where they've got to make a very quick shot. At the same time, you can go along and make them make a 30-foot shot, which is a very long distance, but they've got to go along, seek cover, concealment, look around and see what else is going on, and really drive home the point that they've got to process the entire area. And depending upon how well they're doing, And again, I'm sitting there counting the shots on my hand. I can go along and say, okay, I'm gonna go along and call last shot between two barrels. So they get slide locked. All of a sudden, slide lock, and I've got to do something about it. And I can't do it standing on my 2 feet, so I've got to seek cover someplace. At the same time, I'm dropping magazines, same time I'm putting a new magazine into it, and getting people to start thinking about it because, again, we're exercising the mind to say, I'm just not shooting holes in a target. I'm actually saying, what would I do if this happened? And if I'm in a deadly force encounter, okay, slide lock, I'm going to seek cover. I'm getting out of the line of fire. Yeah. And that's where we keep amping it up, doing several different drills, multiple times, so they see, okay, here's the challenge of moving, here's the challenge of going along and identifying targets, and then trying to, okay, are you hitting the target? If you're hitting the target, you're good. If you're all over the place, take a little bit more time, because again, accuracy is going to win the fight.
Awesome. Wow, there's a lot of great thoughts there. Matthew, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on this aspect because I know we kind of harp on this on the show quite a bit as far as seeking out additional training or going out and getting good training. But what does it mean? You know what I mean? Like, everybody throws that out and says, hey, make sure you go get good training. And then somebody's at home and they're like, well, what is good training? How do I know I'm getting good training, right? And so I think it's good that we talk about your methodology of training or instructor's methodology, because it's important to understand that anybody can look on YouTube and run you through a drill. You can get a drill off of YouTube and say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and run it. Mm-hmm. But it takes an instructor who understands why you do the drill and how to challenge the person in the right way. Like you said, that you don't want to set up this person for failure right off the bat. You do want them to have to push themselves and overcome failure, but you don't want them to fail too soon, right?
Right. Well, you've got in a class, you're going to have students of varying skill levels. Masters to beginning masters, probably not beginners to masters, but you're going to go along and have people that are going to have varying skill levels. One that can draw really good from a holster, and other ones that trip over their own 2 feet. And that's where coaching them through, allowing them to be successful and allowing them to grow and understand how to properly handle the stress.
But it takes a tuned in instructor who knows what they're doing to see the difference between and challenge the ones that are up here and the ones down here, but challenge them differently. So the ones that are down here don't give up and say, I'll never be there, and the ones that are up here aren't not being challenged enough and not getting anything out of it. So I think that you hit on something really important about not just going out and getting training, but getting training from people that understand why they're doing what they're doing.
And one thing I'll add to that, and just from a personal standpoint, I try to go and get training from different people every year. Yeah. I always, when I look at a course, I just don't look at a course as saying, okay, I'm going to shoot 1,000 rounds. What am I going to learn during that time? And can I check off a box saying, okay, yeah, I want to practice more on my moving and shooting? Am I going to be shooting in and around a vehicle? Do I want to go along and do nighttime shooting? Different things that allow me to grow, allow me to go along and work on those areas, because I've got ideas. I train people, but I've got areas I need to be working on also. Both shooting as well as just making myself ready to be able to do it and instruct better.
Wow. Excellent thoughts here today in this discussion with Rob Beckman and Matthew Marister, and so appreciate you guys joining me for this segment. Folks, hope you're enjoying the live coverage from the show here. In just a few minutes, Matthew and I are going to go live again, interviewing John Correa from Active Self-Protection. I hope you'll come back and join us there. It'll just be give us about 3 or 4 minutes, and we'll be right back online again. So thanks for watching. We'll see some more of Rob, I'm sure, in the future, and appreciate it. We'll see you guys in a few more minutes. And we're back. Hey, Riley and Matthew here, Concealed Carry Expo 2018, and it is now our pleasure to interview John Correa from Active Self-Protection.
Hey.
His face probably looks familiar to you, even if you didn't realize that YouTube video you watched somewhere out there at some point. You've probably seen him on YouTube at some point.
Probably.
Because he is the man and the name in the game where it comes to taking self-defense-oriented videos, analyzing them, and really pulling some very valuable lessons out of those.
That's what we try to do. You know, it's not what I plan to do. Is when people ask, you know, well, John, how did you start that? It was all a mistake. But, yeah, man, I mean, people send me real-life surveillance videos of armed robberies, carjackings, muggings, stabbings, home invasions, and, you know, we do after-action reports on them.
Yep.
And that has gotten ridiculously popular. We only started the YouTube channel 2 years ago yesterday. And we're at almost 800,000 subscribers today, which is crazy.
That's seriously, that's phenomenal growth on YouTube. You know, unless you, I mean, well,
you can buy them, but you know what I mean. That's dumb. Don't do that.
So, you know, John, obviously, now you're making the rounds in the speaking, you know, circuits, if you will. You're presenting here at the show. I know you present a lot of the shows across the country. People obviously want to hear what you have to say. So I'm just going to kind of jump right into the nitty-gritty here. Sure. As far as, like, what is the number one thing? Can you pick one thing that out of everything that you've learned in the last several years, that if you could just take that one thing and stick it in Matthew's brain here, what would that one thing be?
Well, so I guess it depends on if you're asking, what's the most important thing for somebody to win a gunfight, or if you're asking, what's the one thing I wish that every person that carried a gun would do?
I like both those questions.
Okay, so we'll start with the second one. If there's one thing that makes me pull my hair out, it is most folks who at least comment in social media, their ridiculous misunderstanding of the legal and moral aspects of self-defense.
Yeah.
The number of people who are itching for a gunfight astounds me. And talking about the legal aspects of self-defense and saying, listen, you want to avoid a gunfight any chance you can because of the aftermath, the fight after the fight. And so, man, if I could get every person in America to sit down, and whether that's online or it is in person, to really sit down and actually understand. See, the thing I think that people do is they think that legal statutes are written in English, and because they use the same words, right? Those are English words in that statute, but they're not in English. They're in legal. And if you don't understand legal, then you don't understand what that means unless it's been explained to you, unless you have a legal to English translator.
Yep.
And
not only that, something that, from what I've seen, that people don't understand is it doesn't even really mean anything until it's actually tested in a courtroom.
And it's different from state to state. So,
so when people go, well, you know, the Supreme Court in Kentucky said, and I said, how does that apply to me in Arizona? That means zero to me.
Yep.
So, I mean, if I could just get every single person who carries a concealed firearm to take something. Now, I don't have any financial stake in those, so I'm sure you won't mind me saying it, but something like, okay, I passed your CCW class. Okay, so your CCW class, hopefully your CCW instructor took the time to walk you through the statutes in your state. And when I teach CCW in Arizona, I only teach CCW classes in my home state in Arizona. But when I teach it there, I literally walk through every single statute, and we do a legal to English conversion. What does this mean? What does that mean you can do? What does that mean you can't do? And every time everybody goes, you mean I can't? You mean what? And no, you cannot use your gun. I said this in my class earlier today as I said, look, as a general rule, unless there are extenuating circumstances, if somebody punches you in the face, you can't shoot them. They go, of course I can shoot them. No, you can't. That's a simple assault. You've just escalated from physical to deadly force. So I wish that they would do that. I wish they would take a class so then that way they knew. Because I show a couple videos in my Surviving the Fight presentation that I did this afternoon at the end that are particularly thorny legal issues. One that just got adjudicated last month in Nevada was a guy who was a clerk in a smoke shop, and two guys came in, and their aim was to steal stuff off the walls. They bust in the store. They start grabbing stuff off the walls. He's about 30 feet away. He draws his gun. Incredible marksmanship. 7 out of 7. Took 7 shots, put them in, all 7 of them in one of the guys that was stealing from the walls. Turns out 2 kids in middle school.
Oh.
Unarmed. And so he said, well, I was in fear for my life. And, of course, the judge asked why. Why were you in fear for your life? Where's the objective, reasonable evidence of a fear of great bodily harm or death? Well, I didn't know if they were going to come at me. So you just said you don't know. Yeah. And if you didn't know, then you can't use deadly force. You have to have objective, reasonable evidence.
And be able to articulate it.
Yeah, you have to have articulable reason why you did what you did. And particularly in Nevada, the statute says bare fear is not enough, that you have to have objective evidence.
Yeah.
So thankfully, this guy hired a really high dollar attorney. I mean, a real big dollar attorney. And that attorney convinced the prosecutor to let this guy plead to illegally pointing a firearm at someone, which was a misdemeanor. 364 days, and the judge gave that suspended and instead 3 years probation. And so he got super lucky from a legal perspective. Now he's going to live on his conscience. And if you go look at in the plea in court, the guy was in tears and apologizing to the family. I'm so sorry for what I did. I can't sleep at night because of what I've done.
Yeah.
And not to mention the fact that he spent $200,000 to $300,000 in attorney's fees.
Absolutely.
And it didn't go to trial. Okay, so man, take a class so that you can avoid those kind of problems, and you know when you can and when you can't, and what you can do and what you can't do. And then there's that paradigm of can I and must I,
or should I?
Yeah, and
sometimes.
should I? Yeah,
right.
you know. So can I maybe get away with it? Maybe, but must I do this? And that's when the gun comes out. When it's, if I don't shoot this guy, then either I'm dead or my loved one's dead. Well, now I have to shoot him. And the consequences are what they are.
Yep.
And chances are good in that instance, well, you ain't going to have any consequences anyways because that's a good shoot. So
yep.
I really wish, you know.
Well, going back to where you started, you talked about it's amazing to you how many gun owners out there, concealed carriers, are just like itching for a fight.
Yeah.
Because that's the attitude sometimes is, oh, I got a guy in my business stealing some stuff. I just stumbled upon him. I better draw my gun and shoot. Well,
yeah.
Like, why? You know, like, so I don't know where that attitude comes from, but.
I think, so in my opinion, everybody gets in their mind the way their gunfight's going to go. You know, they get this scenario in their head. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be the bringer of justice. I'm going to be, you know, the one who makes everything work. And this is how it's going to go. And that might be that one of, you know, I'm going to come across some guy who's, you know, trying to drag a woman into a car, and I'm going to stop him or whatever. And that's all well and good, but you have to understand, wait a minute, I have to be able to think here. Because the situation that plays out actually in front of me almost never looks like, you know, what you're winning in your mind. Yeah. So one of the reasons we do the videos every day is it's just to look at what somebody had to deal with. It's not my hope for your gunfight. As a matter of fact, of course, I hope you never have a gunfight, right?
Absolutely.
But it's not me saying, well, this is how gunfights go. It's me saying, well, this is how this guy's gunfight went. Yeah. He got robbed. This is what he did. If it went well, this is how it went and why it went well for him. And if it went badly, about a third of the videos on the channel, we put up our what we call negative outcomes. This is why it went south.
Yeah.
And, you know, seeing that to then go, okay, what principles function and do well. And I think really, you know, yeah, some of the viewers on the channel, I mean, the main channel right now is getting around 20 to 25 million views a month. And some folks come on there just because they like violence, right? They're like, ooh, you know, which I tell those folks, don't watch. Please don't watch. I'm not trying to help you enjoy violence. I'm trying to teach people how to see it for real. That they recognize, man, this is far scarier and far more nuanced and far more dangerous than what I thought. Because they watch Hollywood and, you know, they think that a handgun's going to.
And that's a big important thing because we can to a certain point we have to because sure. we are analyzing them after the fact. But you don't sit there and say, well, this is what I would have done and he should have done this, because you realize that there's more than one way that this thing can go. And you point out certain instances where this was probably not a great decision, but he made this decision, and this is what resulted from that. So you analyze it in a way that people can absorb and learn from, rather than just armchair quarterback, and this guy should have done this, and he's dumb that he didn't do it this way.
That sounds like what we do on the podcast, and this guy does it far better.
Well, so my background influences that. So my first big boy job in the world was in the U.S. Navy. Okay, so I made hot water the hard way in Uncle Sam's Canoe Club, all right? So in the nuclear world, I operated a nuclear reactor. Anytime something went wrong on a reactor, they would debrief the entire incident. Okay, if it was a piece of equipment that broke that caused a problem in the plant, or God forbid somebody makes, people make mistakes, you operate wrong and you cause a problem. Thank God they're all designed well. They don't break real easy. And then they basically take everybody off watch. They debrief everybody. What happened? What'd you do? How'd that go? Then they'd write up the whole thing, the entire report, and they'd disseminate that to every ship in the fleet that had a nuclear reactor. And we would all be required to read it. This is what happened on this ship on this date. Here's what went down. Here's what this operator did. Here's what this person did. Here's what this person did. Here are the lessons learned. And the goal for that is we don't want to have the same people make the same mistakes and do the same problems. We want to get better. And it can feel a little brutal because if you're in the report and it's like, he did this, that was a mistake, he should have done this instead. Well, so that's where I came from. So when I do these videos, I just look at, okay, I mean, I'm not trying to be a dogmatic bringer of doctrine. I'm trying to be somebody that just says, well, what happened? And that happened. So every time I see somebody do this, that helps them.
Yeah.
So he did that really well. Now sometimes, I had one the other day. A guy went and got a gun from under the counter because a guy threatened him with a knife across his counter in his convenience store. Got a gun under the counter, scared a guy off with it. Okay, great. I said, look, he didn't shoot him. Good, he didn't need to shoot him. Guy ran off with the presence of the gun. Good job.
Yep.
Now, when he reached under the counter, he was pretty close to that guy, put himself at some risk. And so that's why I do recommend you keep a gun on your person. But hey, it worked for him. So, I mean, all right, it worked okay. So success covers a multitude of errors. So, I mean, the goal is not to Monday morning quarterback, but to simply debrief and to go, here's what that looks like in the real world. And actually, the crazy joy out of that is I get messages from people every week now who say, man, John, I got in this thing and I could just hear your voice in my head. And I was like, no, I'm not going to be in one of this guy's videos. And I'm like, good, man, good on you. Or, I get stories of I had this whole thing, and one of my favorite ones is I had a woman a couple months ago sent me a message who said that she was involved in an incident where she pulled into her parking garage, and she was in her spot, and then she realized this guy was really looking at her and coming her way, and she was like, I can't get the car out of here. It's just not going to happen in this spot. And she said, I heard your voice tell me, you got to either get the car out of there or get away from the car. Your car's a coffin if you stay in it. And so I got out of that car as fast as I could, and that gave me space to keep that guy away from me. I didn't end up having to shoot him. And, I yelled at him, and he was like, he chased me in a car a couple times, but he couldn't get me, and he got away. And I was like, man, what a cool thing. Like, my stupid voice in your head was what enabled this guy to, to stay away from him. So, that's what the goal is. It's just to help people. I tell folks that I'm an educator. I taught undergrads for 9 years and graduate students for 5. And in the education world, my goal is not to tell you how to think. My goal is to not to tell you what to think, rather. My goal is to teach you how to think and how to problem solve. Because if you're going to have any profession in the world, you're going to get out there and the textbook's not going to cover your problem. But if you understand how to problem solve in your profession, then you can do anything in the world. Well, that's our profession, is self-defense. So teaching students how to think. And of course, you have to have the mechanics down. You know what I mean? If you're going to shoot a firearm defensively, if I'm thinking about, okay, proper grip, sight picture, sight alignment, trigger control, well, now I'm not thinking about this problem in front of me. I'm thinking about my mechanics. So the mechanics have to be perfect so that I can keep saying, oh, man, I need to shoot that guy, but I got to watch what's behind him, so I got to put that where it belongs. So doing all that stuff then helps students stay on the problem-solving side of their brain. So that's what we're trying to do with the channel.
Awesome. Well, that's great stuff. So back to where we started, because you were going to answer 2 questions for us.
Okay.
And the second one that we haven't gotten to yet was if you had that one thing that you wish you could impart on anybody viewing here today as it relates to surviving a gunfight. Out of the thousands of videos that you've viewed and analyzed, like, what's the one big thing that you can kind of, I know there's a lot of lessons to be learned, but what's maybe one big one?
Probably the biggest one is, yes, it's a combination of skills, but the way I say it, it's the first person to put a shot in the meaty bits of the other guy wins. So there's a core group of skills that are required in that.
Yeah.
But so it gets attributed to Wyatt Earp. It's not really a Wyatt Earp quote. It's from the movie Tombstone.
Right.
That the line is that fast is fine, but accuracy is final. Right. Yeah. And it's funny. It's one I learned from my Vietnam veteran pop. Okay, my pop was a 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines in Vietnam, and he always taught me when he first started teaching me to shoot both rifles and handguns as a hunter. He's take your time in a hurry. Take your time in a hurry, John. You got to have enough time to take the extra split second to get the good shot off because you don't want a bad one. Okay, fine. So really the first person to put a shot in anywhere that's vital in the other guy wins. And so, yes, you have to be fast, but it has to go where you need it to go. So that means the skill sets of a fast and reliable, accurate draw, of good sight picture and good sight alignment and a proper trigger control, and being able to put that together to be the first to put the shot where it belongs is the critical skill to win a gunfight. And you know, honestly, man, we go to these kind of shows, and I'm all about capitalism and I'm all about free America, but I think most people, they carry a gun not thinking about how am I going to get to this gun when I need it.
Yeah.
And they carry a gun thinking, okay, this makes me feel safer. It's more of a totem.
Yep.
A shibboleth, you know,
a talisman,
a magic talisman that wards away danger, a lucky rabbit's foot, than it is a useful tool. We call it a whoopee, you know. You remember, so if you're in the Army, every soldier in the Army knows this whoopee, you know. But I go back to Mr. Mom. You remember the old movie in the 80s, Mr. Mom, when his little boy has his security blanket, and he calls him his whoopee. Sport, we got to talk about your whoopee, man. And, you know, for a lot of people, their gun is their whoopee. They just, you know, man, it makes me feel so safe. In reality, it needs to be a tool. You know, it's like a screwdriver or, you know, a hammer. Like, you know, a construction worker has a big thing full of tools. But they're only useful if you can use them. So having that ability that says, yes, I can get a gun out on target, put a shot where it belongs, and do so with a modicum of speed is the most important skill. So when I teach in class, in live fire classes, we call that a Pareto principle. You know, the 20-80 rule is how most people know that, right? And that 20-80 rule says 20% of skills, of inputs, give you 80% outcomes. And that 20-80 rule is, dude, be the first to put a shot in the other guy, and almost every time you're going to win. Not 100%. I've seen a couple times where somebody that shot pretty good finished a fight the other way, but man, vast majority of times, you shoot some bad guy, you pop that first goblin, and the other goblins are going to start thinking about finding better things to do with their day. And so practicing that skill of, okay, I got to clear my cover garment. I got to get my hand on the gun and get it out reliably without putting my finger on the trigger. We got to get good firm two-handed grip on the gun, drive it out, find my sights, and put that first shot there, and do that without hesitation. Because I've already made this decision that I have to shoot somebody right now. That's the single greatest set of skills to win when everything else goes down. And I've seen untrained people win gunfights. I mean, I see people that make all kinds of mistakes, but I will tell you from watching it is clear when you see somebody who has a high skill level that just that when the switch happens, you know, it's like competition, right? You don't get a beep in a gunfight, but something is your trigger that says go, and that's your beep. We call it your beep, right?
Yep.
And when somebody who's really trained, they hear their beep, and it goes, you go, wow. There's a guy or a gal who really knew what they were doing, and it was clear this was not a fair fight.
Yeah.
Now, thankfully, on the good side, not the bad side, right? So, I mean, that's really it. Train and train and train to get that first, you know, clear the cover garment, good grip on the gun, drive that gun out and get the first shot where it belongs. And then after that, keep doing that until such time as it doesn't need to be done anymore, right? And I think people want to train, and they love to train the for lack of a better term, they love the scintillating things. They love, you know, they want to train the double barrel rolls, and, you know, they want to go to Tactical Fantasy Band Camp. Yeah, they want to go to John Wick. You know, they want to do that, and they want to do this. So I'm going to shoot my rifle and then do the transition to my pistol and this and that. And I'm all about that stuff. I mean, I just took a 2-day rifle class. I mean, you know, it's Tactical Fantasy Band Camp. And that can be fun, and I don't have any problems with that. And I love competing. I love doing, you know, IDPA, USPSA. You want to shoot that stuff? Yes, do that. But be excellent in the basics first. Be excellent in the most important things first if you're going to carry a firearm for self-defense. I mean, I know folks who they don't carry a gun for self-defense. They're just competitive shooters.
Right.
And so they don't ever work on those other skills, and that's totally fine. Like, I'm down with that. They're incredible competitors, and they'd never want to work on clearing a cover garment because they shoot USPSA and they never do it. Okay.
Right.
All right, man, I'm down. So that would be my answer to that question.
That's awesome. That's two. I mean, well, there was a lot more than just two, but that's two really excellent lessons to take away from John Correa and all the great stuff happening in active self-protection.
Thanks, man.
And so we're going to have to let you go, unfortunately, at this point. On to the next thing. And I know you've got a busy schedule as well. So, folks, I hope you enjoyed this. Great interview here today. We got a lot more great live coverage coming to you from the show here at the Concealed Carry Expo. Coming up next, we got Joe Kalil, and we finish up with Scott Wagner at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yep.
And Joe's coming up here in just a couple of minutes at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And then we'll see you again tomorrow morning. So, John, thank you so much for your time.
Man, thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the
Thanks,
talk.
John.
Great. Hey everyone, Riley and Matthew here again at the Concealed Carry Expo, live from the show floor. And boy, lot of activity still going on. Less than an hour left of the show for tonight. And of course, we'll see you again tomorrow. But we are now privileged to sit down with Mr. Joe Kalil, remarkable man in the industry. Lots of great ideas and knowledge and experience where it comes to countering an active shooter threat. Let me just introduce Joe a little bit for you. He came prepared, which is really cool of him. So Joe is a constitutional Christian serving as an elected Boone County, Kentucky constable. He's a commercial airline captain flying B-737s for a major airline, serves as a federal law enforcement officer and law enforcement firearms instructor. Joe is also a former Army officer and pilot who served in multiple combat zones. He has been inducted into the new Kentucky Veterans Hall of Fame, has received the Presidential Volunteer Service Award, and is a Kentucky Colonel, which is, that's cool. Like they actually exist. He is also a certified flight instructor and possesses master's, bachelor's, and associate's degrees. Joe is a USCCA and NRA training counselor and instructor in multiple disciplines. He owned a firearms training school for 11 years where he taught approximately 3,000 students a multitude of courses, from concealed carry to advanced tactical handgun and rifle courses. He is a master shooter in IDPA. Joe, partnering with multiple sheriffs, designed the school POST program using the Armed Pilot program as a model. POST stands for Protecting Our Students and Teachers. Joe has studied under two of the most recognized experts in school safety, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman and Phil Chalmers. He has taught lockdown procedures, active shooter, and bomb threat procedures to schools and businesses, as well as trained private and church security teams. That's a mouthful, wow. Joe. And so here he is. We're pleased to sit down with you, Joe. And anything you want to add to that?
No, I think what's important to add to the background is that on 9/11, they used the same type of airplanes that I was flying at the time, two 757s and two 767s as weapons, and I had a 7-day-old daughter. And wow. It was personal. And so within a week of 9/11, I actually joined an organization to try to get pilots armed.
Yeah.
To me, I'm like, if the hijacker's objective is to make it into the cockpit and take over my airplane and use it as a weapon, why don't we protect the flight deck?
Yep.
And so I think that's an important piece of motivation. And so I've been involved in this type of, push on a national scale, and now we're trying to push on a state scale to actually protect our schools from and mitigate the active killer threat. That's the key.
Yeah. It's a fantastic program that we now have as far as training and arming some of our pilots out there in the skies, which I'm thankful for. I've certainly, when we're expected to disarm ourselves, go through security and all that stuff, we're really relying on you not only to fly the plane safely, but also be the last line of defense in the event that somehow somebody does make it onto the plane and poses a threat.
And the interesting thing there is there's a layered defense. You have the screening, and then you have federal air marshals, and then you have armed pilots. Well, that causes that layered protection, and that's the same thing we want to do in the schools.
Right.
We want school resource officers to remain, and we want to supplement them with a program like the POST program.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about the POST program. What does that look like in kind of an easy-to-understand, a summary of sorts for our viewers?
It's pretty straightforward. Basically, all we're looking for, it's important that it's only volunteers. We're looking for a 5% participation rate. So we're talking 1 in 20 school employees. Also, we're talking anybody that works at the school. A lot of people saying armed teachers. Well, it's school employees. There's a lot of employees at the school besides teachers.
Right.
These individuals, after they volunteer, would fill out an application. Then they'd go through an interview with school employees, staff or administration, with the sheriff or police, chief of police, and the school resource officer, if there's one at the school that they'd be working at. Then after that, they would go through a background check, possibly mental screening checks. Then they would actually go through a 6.5-day training program, 58.5 hours of training, with only one goal: how to mitigate the active killer threat in our schools. It's a simple focus. It's not going to be distracted by miscellaneous things. Yeah. Then they would also be requalified with their firearms every 6 months. And just before the school year starts every year in the summer, we would put them through a 1-day refresher course. Now, this program is not a take-it-or-leave-it program. It's actually a program that we want the schools to adopt and modify to their liking, and we're help them. So it's not a either take this or leave it. So we want them to take possession and ownership of it.
Yeah.
But there's 3 reasons why we think the program will be successful. Number 1 is deterrence. when you have a school like we do now, most schools, all they have is a no gun sign. Let's talk about that just for a second.
Yeah.
That no gun sign portrays a very direct message to the gunman that this school is unprotected and that this can be a free-for-all until police respond. Well, when seconds count, the police are minutes away, and it's not their fault. They can't be everywhere at the same time. In Kentucky here, the average is 30% or less coverage of school resource officers in our schools. So we don't even have SROs in every school.
Yeah.
So we want to take down the no gun sign and put up a sign that says school employees on this campus are trained and armed. We think that just by saying the program exists and putting the sign up would deter the attack from occurring in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is immediate armed response. Again, when the police are minutes away and seconds count, the school employee who's armed, or the ones that are not armed for that matter, when the shot takes place outside of their workplace, they're the first responder, like it or not.
Yeah.
And now all we're asking for is to put 5% through a screening and training process to arm them. And so now the response to the gunman is going to be faster. And guess what the statistics are on that? Active killers in a normal situation, 40% of times actually take their own life at the first response of an armed response.
Yeah.
In schools, it's 70%. It's even higher. So we need that reaction to the school shooter to be faster. So A, it was deterrence. B, it was immediate armed response. And number 3 is the thoroughness of training. So we have more training in this program than armed pilots receive. And again, the whole focus is on simply mitigating the active killer threat.
But I also think that amount of training, 58.5 hours of training, is in the refresher course each year. I think that's fantastic because that's almost more important for a lot of folks than just the initial training. It's just like, continuing. I mean, we all know shooters that were trained really well to high standards many years ago, but haven't done anything since. And we know what they shoot like sometimes. But I like that what you set as sort of a standard is actually, I think, very achievable and reasonable. We just talked on the podcast recently about the law passed in Florida, where they've approved the arming of teachers. Mm-hmm. But I think when you total it all up, it's over 150 hours of training that's required. And I kind of our takeaway was from that, Joe, was like that's unattainable for most teachers. Well, unless a school is literally saying we'll pay you to go, for however many weeks.
And doesn't that account to, aren't they talking 3 weeks of training? I think that's
that's basically 3 weeks. Yeah.
So, this is a good point to bring up the Ohio FASTER program. So Ohio, the Buckeye Firearms Association, has a program where they have armed school employees. It's called the FASTER program, and people can go to fastersaveslives.org to research that.
Yep.
And they have trained 1,300 school employees that come from 76 out of 88 of the counties in Ohio. And they have at least 1,300 school employees on the waiting list. In other words, there's a true desire for people to do this.
Yep.
And so they're only doing 3 days of training, and ours is over 6 days of training. Now, I'm not saying our program is better because I attended the FASTER program, and it's actually a fantastic training course. Actually, as a constitutionalist, I think if we just took away the gun-free zones and actually just allowed any law-abiding citizen to be armed, you would actually solve the problem. But if I'm having hard enough trouble getting 6.5 days of training into the schools, it's a non-starter with some of these school systems. So.
It's so interesting because we have those conversations, right? And I love pointing out to people. In fact, I just attended maybe a month ago now. In our school district back in Colorado, where I live, we had this big school security and safety meeting. Bringing in parents, bringing in teachers, administrators, local law enforcement. To it was obviously just after Parkland, and so just talking about all of that and what it meant for our community, for our schools, what we were going to do about it. There's still some things in the works, but I was in a conversation following that meeting with someone that was like, I just can't see us arming teachers or administrators. Like that, it's not the place for it. We want to focus on being teachers and administrators. And I thought, it's interesting because I said, you realize we have a perfect case study for this concept. Speaking to constitutionalism, right? And it's the state of Utah for 15 years, right?
They've allowed anybody with a concealed carry permit to carry in their schools, and guess how many incidents they've had? It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a question based along those lines. Is obviously you talk to people a lot about this, and from a lot of the viewers that are watching this are probably on our side, like agree with us, like, hey, arming teachers, not forcing them to be armed, is a good idea. But outside of this convention hall, there's probably there are a lot of people out there that immediately jump to the conclusion, okay, we can't arm teachers. They have too much on their plate, or it's going to be too dangerous. Do you find that when you sit down and explain this logically to people like that are averse to it, that it switches more minds than not? I mean, I'm sure there's still people that are just against it.
Well, we have some people that emotionally look at the firearm issue and they just cannot get over that emotional hurdle. But here's where I like to start with people. You know, we have to face reality and look at our society as a big picture. We use firearms to protect our president, our congressmen, our celebrities, our jewelry stores, our shops, our businesses, our stadiums. For goodness sakes, do we put two armed persons into an $80,000 to $100,000 armored vehicle to protect our insured money? But our kids, which is our most precious gift from God, gets a no-gun sign? It blows me away. And sometimes I tell those people, when you go to Walmart, you know, 5, 10, 15, 20% of the people around you are carrying guns. You don't know about it.
Yeah.
But here's the beautiful thing about our program, by the way, because of the concealed carry aspect of it, is that if you walked into the school tomorrow after implementation of the school post program, you would not know anything other than the sign on the door. In other words, the school employees would be carrying concealed firearms. You wouldn't know how many there are, and you wouldn't know where they're located. That's huge in the Art of War book. Surprise factor is a huge thing.
Absolutely.
So it's important.
Well, and speaking to, not to make too much of a deal out of Utah, but I love the fact that their statute prevents school districts and administrators from even asking which of their teachers carries concealed.
Right.
So, I mean, because that obviously keeps the surprise factor completely a true surprise.
Right.
So, can you walk us through, so what does the post-program training look like? Like, walk me through, if I was going to go through this program, what are some of the key components?
Well, it's interesting is that we have 5 core days of training, but we have 1 day, enhanced day of training before the 5 days of core training. And why do we separate this? Because we want the participants to show up to the shooting portion of the course prepared with the right type of holster, right type of firearm, right type of mindset, and everything. So we have a 10.5-hour training day where we talk about mindset, the program details, how sensitive it is that they keep their identities confidential. We talk about handgun nomenclature and function, the different ways to conceal it on your body, all the things you would expect to kind of warm them up to the topic. That night, we also go through 3 or 4 hours of medical trauma training to give them that training. Then a week or two later, they come to the 5 days of training, and they get 2 half days of classroom, and the rest of it's all on the range. 1,200 rounds of ammunition is what they're going to fire. And we also have a FAT simulator that we have access to, at least in northern Kentucky, and we're going to put them into the schools with either simunitions or airsoft and actually put them through scenarios in the classroom, in the hallway, in the assembly area, in the lunchroom, in the front office, shoot and no-shoot scenarios with high stress to try to inoculate them and get them used to what they should do and should not do. So it's a really involved program.
That's awesome.
It's an hour and a half more training than the pilots receive. I mean, it's pretty exciting when you actually look at the syllabus and how thorough. The other thing I want to mention is school resource officers real quick. This program is not intended to replace any school resource officer. It's just to supplement them.
Right.
But we have to admit something. School resource officers, they go to lunch, they go on vacation, they attend training, they do home visits. They actually could be on the other side of campus, or God forbid, they could be targeted first because they're in uniform. So this program, again, forming that layered defense along with the SRO is invaluable. And that's how you protect your schools.
That's right.
And so this is doable. These shootings are preventable.
Absolutely. Absolutely they are.
How often do you see teachers that go through that first phase of training and then say, hold on, this is more than I can handle? Do you get a sense of that, or are those people pretty much?
Yes, and hopefully the interview process and a background check and talking to them ahead of time and actually sending an email describing the program will help them decide if they want to participate or not. But it is important to note that while they're going through the training, they can be eliminated. They can be eliminated on the last day.
I think that's important.
So at any time for either mindset issues, and this is really your weapon anyway.
Yeah.
The firearm's a tool. Your mind is your weapon. And if they don't have the right mindset, they should not be a participant in the program.
Absolutely.
And they can be eliminated from the program at any point with no ramifications to their job either, and that's important to note.
Yeah.
They volunteered for this, so there could be no negative ramifications there. So,
Good
and it's
stuff.
really a cost-effective program too. The costs are minimal. Ohio uses a 503c nonprofit and actually pays for the training, pays for the hotel, gives a huge emergency medical kit to every participating school, and every teacher gets a individual first aid kit.
Yeah.
Because you know as well as I do, when the shooting's over, what kills then?
Yeah.
Bleeding. And so we got to stop the bleeding immediately. So our training would potentially equip them with the same equipment and give them the training to actually, stop bleeding.
You're not when you're that armed teacher or administrator or staff member, you're not only the first line of defense, the first responder for the shooting aspect, but also the aftermath. So.
That's right.
Man, this is fantastic stuff, and unfortunately, I think we're out of time at this point. I would encourage everyone watching to go check out what's the official name? The School Post program.
Let me give the website. It is www.post, POSTKY for Kentucky.org. I say Kentucky's in there, but I want to emphasize to everybody that there's 36 states that allow something like this to be implemented now. So the key is just take the program. It's no permission needed. Take the program, run with it, use it as a beginning portion to design your own program, and approach your school boards and actually see if they will implement. Let's protect our kids.
I love that. And good work, brother. We appreciate you. Thanks for coming on with us today at the Concealed Carry Expo.
Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
God bless, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless.
Great. We'll see you back here in just a few minutes for our final interview of the day with Scott Wagner. All right, guys. Hey, Matthew and Riley here at the Concealed Carry Expo. Again, this is our last segment of the day. It's been our pleasure to have you viewing this live in the comfort of your homes or in your automobile or hopefully safely or wherever. Maybe some of you walking around the show floor are watching, and we appreciate you. So we are now pleased to introduce you to Scott Wagner, a long career in law enforcement, and writer, reviewer, tactician, and master of the revolver.
I don't know if I'd say master. I'm fairly good with it, though. It's my favorite shooting tool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Except you're not carrying one.
Oh, see, now you told on me.
He has an interesting gun. Maybe you could just sort of like, give us a little peek there.
Well, I'm carrying a Bond Arms Bullpup 9.
Yep.
And very slick little handgun, 9mm, 8-round capacity. And I did that because I would have carried revolver. I didn't want to have any chance of mixing live revolver ammo anywhere while I was doing the training today in the training class. And so
we don't talk, I think, enough about is this idea of carrying, the old school revolver in this day and age. And I think we're starting to see a resurgence somewhat of the revolvers. I see, maybe not a ton, but I definitely do see more people talking about revolvers, talking about carrying revolvers, referring to their revolvers. We know the revolver is a reliable, trustworthy, age-old design.
Right.
Still very capable in terms of performance. But the one thing that's probably held many shooters back, if they're not really interested in a revolver, is perhaps the capacity thing, right?
That's an issue, yeah.
A carry revolver is typically 5 rounds, maybe 6 rounds. But probably the second thing is that reload, which is kind of a whole new ball game for a shooter. And just a few minutes ago, you were doing a demonstration on the demo stage here on reloading revolvers. So just curious, maybe you can kind of give us a little bit of a briefer summary of what you just covered over there on the stage there.
Sure, and a quick follow-on to what you said about the popularity. Ruger and Smith & Wesson seem to be introducing new revolver models all the time, and their lineups are pretty darn extensive now. So
and you've also seen Colt is getting back into the game.
Right.
You're seeing Kimber, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So on the reloading issue, the reason I did the class here was because I felt that a lot of concealed carry classes, the people that show up revolvers, don't get the proper training on how to run them because it is more of a finesse firearm in terms of its operation reloading. For example, a speed loader is a gravity feed device, and if you're not working with gravity in terms of providing a straight path for the bolts to fall in the cylinder, for example, you're going to have a problem. You won't get it loaded. You'll get rounds hanging out, and the reload will be very slow and problematic. But if you learn to work with gravity, allowing the rounds to fall in the chamber, allowing the empty speed loader to fall clear rather than trying to pick it up and put it someplace, kicking the empty rounds far away from the cylinder of the gun forcefully so there's nothing to hang up, you'll see your speed improve quite a bit. And, you work from the same principle of slow is smooth, smooth is fast. So practicing with dummy ammunition, is critical in learning the operation. But once you have understand the basics of it and how the best reloads work, because there's a number of different ways of reloading a revolver. Once you have that done, you can be very, very fast with it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, certainly there's plenty of evidence out there of just how fast a person can be at handling and reloading a revolver.
Certainly.
Everyone, well, maybe not everyone, but many of you, I'm sure, are probably familiar with the video of Jerry Michalik, doing the world record shoot, with a reload in the middle there. I mean, like, you can't even see his hands move. They're so fast.
And the type of revolver that Jerry uses, and not to take anything away from him, aids in a rapid reloading. He's using a full moon clip with a short stubby cartridge of 45, and you just drop it in and you go. There's the step of getting the empty speed loader clear from there is removed out of the equation.
Yeah.
Now, he would certainly, beat most anybody with a standard speed loader too, but that gives a little bit of edge in the reload.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, he's certainly, obviously a very, very well-known competitive shooter.
Exactly.
So, what do you look for, or what do you maybe offer in terms of words of advice to someone that maybe you're teaching, instructing, or helping along the way as they are maybe looking at a revolver as their personal defense weapon. Both in terms of the revolver itself, maybe it's speed loaders and some of the different options that are out there for that, different types. So, where does one maybe get started looking into that?
Well, first of all, it's important to realize the advantages of revolvers, because when people are talking, generally they're not familiar with them. They always talk about the quote-unquote disadvantage of a low capacity, 5 or 6 or 7 shots. But they're missing the advantages of revolver. I like to say that it is very hard to make it accidentally go boom, but very easy to make it go boom when you need it to.
Yeah.
For example, the magazine can't accidentally be released slightly, or it can't be taken out of battery. It is going to run as long as you're strong enough to pull the trigger, and it's a good quality revolver, quality ammunition, it's going to run. That's one of the primary advantages. The other advantage I like to was pointing out today, and I've got an article coming out in Concealed Carry Magazine in a few more months about a direct contact shot.
Yeah.
When you're in close proximity to somebody where the fight's in close, where it's actually quite likely to be, you can press that revolver barrel against the opponent's body, head, any place that you get access to, and fire all 5, 6, or 7 shots, whatever it holds, without jamming. Because any locking breech type semi-automatic, whether it's a tilt barrel, whether it's a rotary barrel, you start pushing on the end of the muzzle of that gun, you're going to bring it out of battery, maybe to the point of a stovepipe jam. You may not get any shots off, you may get 1 off.
Yep.
And position you're in, grounded, standing on your head, holding it in every position the revolver's going to go.
Yep.
And it doesn't require a locked wrist to ensure that it's going to cycle properly.
Exactly.
I also like when you're talking about the contact shots in close quarters, which concealed carry is often close quarters. The idea that, I run my students through retention drills.
Sure.
And a lot of times they're so close in with the gun that the slide hits their body, catches on a shirt or part of their jacket, and it causes a malfunction. Another thing about the revolver is, you can shoot it from under clothing, not worry about a jam.
Inside a purse.
Through a purse, and
or a coat pocket.
And it will still cycle. So, that's one benefit that a lot of people don't take for into consideration.
And while I carry semi-automatic on duty while I'm working, it's that 5-shot Smith & Wesson M&P 38 that's riding in my left pants pocket, and it's a hammer design.
Right.
At the sheriff's office I worked for, it's probably been 15 or more years ago, I was dispatched on a call during hunting season. A couple of deer hunters that may have been poaching on a property, may have been trespassing. As it turned out, they weren't. But I'm going to make an approach on a couple of guys standing there with shotguns in their hands, and my gun is holstered. So I thought, don't like those odds, and I pulled out my backup gun, put it in my coat pocket, just like you're saying. Walked up and talked to those guys calmly. They had no idea that they were being covered. And I was able to defend myself without offending them. You know, and so it all went fine.
What's the word? Escalating the situation.
Absolutely.
Right?
Right. I mean, we're in a law enforcement precarious position, and you can't go and do something like walking up with a gun approach when all you know is like, this might be a trespassing plate, But you can, that revolver allowed me to be ready, defend myself, and right through my uniform coat pocket if need be.
Well, it certainly has that application for you in that situation. Also has application very similarly for civilians.
Oh, sure.
A woman perhaps walking to her vehicle, sees someone, that's in the vicinity that's, for whatever reason causes her to have some alarm, and she can maybe, place her hand, at least have it on or near the gun ready to go.
Well, if she's wearing a jacket or a coat and she's worried before she leaves that door, there's no problem with taking it out and putting it in the pocket and walking to the car, wherever she's going with it in hand. Or walking the dog in an area that's questionable. Or, if you have that access to, if you're carrying it in a jacket, you're good to go. There's nothing to snag on there. You'll be able to fire all 5 shots. If you try to carry a semi-automatic pistol in the pocket, the slide's going to get tangled in coat material. And an exposed hammer 38, you might get a couple shots off, but again, you've got the hammer maybe getting bound up in the coat material as well.
Like I said, this is good stuff for us to be talking about today. It's something that I think we did an episode on the Concealed Carry podcast quite a while ago, Jacob and I, and kind of comparing revolvers and semi-autos, and we touched on some of this stuff. But it is something that just doesn't get talked about that often. Maybe what are some of the mistakes do you see that people might make that are shooting or perhaps carrying a revolver for self-defense?
Well, actually, I don't see too many mistakes per se because, like I said, it's hard to make a mistake with it. They're smaller mistakes, I could say, would maybe be, not carrying a reload at all, or carrying a reload in a place where it's inconvenient to get to. Your revolver reloads always need to be kept on the strong side, your shooting hand side of your body for access, while semi-automatic pistol magazines are kept on the opposite side of your body for access, because you're reloading your semi-automatic with your left hand. On the proper technique, you're reloading the revolver with the right.
Yep.
So that's gonna make a difference there. I really don't see that many mistakes that people make, other than perhaps feeling like they have to choose the most powerful 38 special load, double plus P plus ammo, because they think that's what they need to do the job, and they don't. And you start having problems with being able to control a gun, not wanting to go shoot it with that ammo because it hurts. It's advised, while they make very ultra lightweight 357 Magnum revolvers, I've never had any interest in shooting one. And I have fired them before, but it's not a lot of fun to go more than 5 rounds. And so you can load it with 38s, and have a much better shooting experience.
Absolutely.
And still being capable of dealing with the threat.
Well, there's another thing here too. We've touched on this a little bit too on the podcast and whatnot, that not only are we seeing maybe a renaissance or a resurgence somewhat of maybe some older platforms or older style platforms of guns, but also with ammunition. We're seeing a lot of agencies now switching from 40 over to 9mm and vice versa. And a lot of that, I think, a lot of the benefits for doing so and reasons for doing so might be also similar, both as far as making the case for 9mm as well as making the case for 38. Because a lot of the same reasons are there. I mean, we're talking about 2 basically identical calibers, and what we've seen is an incredible advancement in technology where it comes to bullets.
Absolutely.
You can go pull all kinds of reports out there on the performance of 9mm. We don't see it so much in the 38, but I imagine it'd be very similar, that we're seeing better bullet construction, more consistent performance, appropriate penetration, and is doing it consistently. And that's really what we're looking for, is consistent penetration and performance. And so, I mean, I would think that that's a pretty strong case, even though we tend to think of the 38 as being a little bit maybe underpowered. It definitely can perform very well.
Well, absolutely. And you mentioned the 40, which everybody felt they had to have for many years, including law enforcement agencies, and people found out that one thing you didn't mention is controllability. A 40 is really hard on a novice shooter. This is why we used 9mm in my academy for 27 years that I ran that firearms program, because I wanted the shooters to be able to learn under a lesser recoiling gun, and they did much better with it. The 40 is, you just want to put that in people's hands right away, and even law enforcement officers that are carrying it and qualified with it, they don't really enjoy it that much. And so, the 9mm is...
This guy over here, though, is a...
I carry a 40 because in my department we were issued 40 cal, but I was also assistant range master, and I know exactly what you're talking about as far as training police officers even. And when given the opportunity to go to a 9mm, a lot of them chose to do that, especially the ones that always, when requal came up, had some issues, right?
On the edge of that,
and you're exactly right.
Their scores went up, right?
Absolutely.
And I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine.
But I mean, I don't care who you are. I know that there's some diehards out there that'll say, well, you guys are just being a bunch of wimps, Learn how to shoot the 40 or learn how to shoot a 45 or whatever it is. But the fact is, no matter who you are, nobody's going to argue with you that you can't shoot a 22 faster and easier, right, than you can more powerful guns. Same is true with this. If you can shoot a 40 really well, you can shoot a 9. Maybe not a ton better if you're a super skilled shooter, but you could definitely shoot it.
And if your capacity goes up a little bit, there's no harm in that. You have better controllability, more capacity. I mean, you're not giving up much. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Absolutely. Wow. So back to let's just because we have the opportunity, I think, to pick your brain on this. Can you walk us through, imagine we're doing sort of like a visualization technique here. For those that may not be familiar, you touched on, performing reloads on a revolver with your shooting hand.
Right.
Because your support hand is doing some other things with regards to the revolver and clearing the spent casings out of it. So can you walk us kind of through how you describe performing a reload on a revolver?
Sure, and I can refer to people can look up and find there was a great article in the American Rifleman magazine last year, I believe, that had excellent pictures and step-by-step showing exactly what I'm talking about. So look that up for assistance too. But basically what happens when you're firing a revolver, say you fired your 5 shots and it's time to reload. Your right hand, shooting hand thumb, is going to push the cylinder latch, and your left hand is going to come in and start taking control of the handgun. Your fingers are going to come in and push that revolver cylinder open, and middle and index fingers, whatever gets on there, is going to hold that cylinder open. Control is then transferred to your left hand.
Assuming you're a right-handed shooter.
Yeah, of course. Right hand.
There's no lefties out there.
No, there's no lefties. Listen to it. So when it shifts control, you're also going to get your thumb on the ejector rod, because you'll need that. Having fired live rounds, the cases can expand and stick a little bit. So you're going to need extra leverage to get them out. So your thumb is there. You're going to take the revolver and into your left hand entirely and kick those empty rounds out while holding the cylinder open. Kick them down and up. Yeah. One of the mistakes people make, and it just seems natural because they want to look at the gun's operation, is to turn it sideways to kick those rounds out. Or they're going to get a extractor override and have an empty cartridge case sitting underneath the extractor star and having to pick that out and slowing the reload down, maybe endangering them. But by kicking away and letting gravity work, as I mentioned, the cartridges all fall free and clear. Once you're empty, the left hand, in this case, is keeping the cylinder open. While you're kicking those empties out, you should have been reaching either for the speed loader that's in a pouch on your belt or in your strong side pocket, kicking them out, getting that speed loader, and beginning the process to load. Gravity is where it comes into play here again, because you want to hold the muzzle down, almost directly perpendicular to the ground to let the rounds fall in. If you're trying to force this, it's like I said earlier, it's a finesse kind of thing, reloading like this. You find the left 2 charge holes or empty chambers on the left and line up to the live cartridges in the loader. Always hold the loader, if it's a cylindrical loader, by I call the barrel, the cylinder portion. Never hold it by the knob. Because you can end up dropping those rounds everywhere else but in the gun when you most need to do that. So you let that slide down in there, and you turn the loader knob, or in case of a Safariland loader, just push it all the way down in, and holding it down, let those rounds drop in. Once you've done that, just go ahead and close the cylinder. People want to waste an extra step by trying to pick out the empty speed loader and throw it somewhere. If you're flipping the cylinder up, closing, that's going to kick that speed load away, and you're reloaded again. But running through that very slowly and building up speed, you'll be amazed at how fast that you can get. And how reliable you get. So it'll become second nature to you.
What is a good reload time?
Oh my goodness, 5 seconds, 6 seconds. I mean, truly, you get as fast as people with the semi-automatic can, or, right up in that range. You're just not reloading as many rounds. And it's easy to flub a semi-automatic reload too. So they're not foolproof.
Absolutely.
So 3 to 5 seconds if you're practicing and getting up really fast. I think I'm somewhere in the 5 second range on a good day. So
Great. Wow. That was a really good exercise. Thanks for walking us through that.
Sure.
Now, what would you say though, since I did kind of joke about it, for a lefty? So you're shooting a revolver left-handed. I do know that kind of introduces a whole another dynamic to performing that.
I think the principles are the same. If you haven't purchased a revolver yet and you are left-handed, I would recommend that you look at the Smith & Wesson M&P Bodyguard 38 Special, either the laser-sighted version, integral laser, or without. Now they've come without a laser on it if you want to save some money. And the important thing about that particular gun is that the cylinder latch release is on the top of the frame rather than on the side. So it's ambidextrous, so you can unlatch that easy with your left thumb or your right thumb. It works well for both. And it's going to take some adaptation. The principle would still essentially be the same. In other words, you should still be reloading with your shooting hand in the end, while if you're left-handed, reloading with the left hand and the loader there, while holding the revolver cylinder open with your right and letting it rest there.
Yeah, good stuff.
But that M&P Bodyguard is, I don't know why somebody hasn't thought of that before, of repositioning the cylinder latch release.
Absolutely. Yeah, we see a lot of adaptations on a lot of other guns in the industry to make things obviously a lot easier lefties and righties.
Yes.
So when are you going to team up with a gun manufacturer and give your 2 cents in your brain and tell them, hey, make a left-handed revolver that the cylinder opens the other way?
Oh, I'm sure they're pounding at my door, waiting right now as we talk, waiting to talk to me about it. But I'm always happy. I talked with a lot of the industry people over time, and they're always interested, not ideas just from me, but from the consumers out there. You know, the reason we have so many guns today to select from is because the concealed carry movement. There wasn't, when only law enforcement essentially could carry concealed firearms on a regular basis. Well, when I started, you had a choice of a Chief Special, a 6-shot Colt, Walther PPK was another good compact pistol, or 25. That was about it.
Yep.
You know, and boy, when this boom came along, then it's given us so many choices and options, and it's just fantastic what's happening out there. And so it's benefited law enforcement and the civilian world.
Yep.
But if it hadn't been for the civilians doing this, we would not probably be having this conversation right now.
So true. So true. Well, I think we're about hitting that. We've got maybe a couple more minutes here, but you know, Scott, I don't know, is there anything that you feel really passionate about that you'd like to kind of put out there? About anything, you know, firearms related, training related. I mean, maybe, obviously with a long career like yours, I think you probably know a thing or two about training and the importance of it. What would you say to, you know, the average gun owner out there, the average concealed carrier out there, as it relates to what would you hope to impress upon them as it relates to, you know, implementing in their training or whatever it is?
Well, here's the college professor part coming out.
Yeah.
Although a lot of the liberal college professors claim to believe in critical thinking these days, they don't exercise it, and it's always a part of my classes when I teach. Don't believe what I say just because I'm saying it. You know, check and verify. So if you're going to some kind of shooting training program and you're watching, it's like, boy, that really doesn't make sense to me. Why do they have me do this? Question that. Maybe not to them, but don't take that as this is the only way to do it. You question that and say, is this a better way? Or is this right? Is what they're saying? Does this make sense?
Right. And not only does it make sense, maybe, but does it make sense for you personally?
Right. Will it work for you?
Yeah.
And so there's stuff out there that can be downright dangerous, taught by people that have very little experience, that get other people in trouble. They think, hey, this is the way to do it, and it's really not. Does it make sense? Do you feel comfortable with it? Does it work for you? Mm-hmm. And don't be afraid to, you know, just because somebody's up there with the title and they're teaching a class, that doesn't mean that they're right about what they're teaching.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Do you do much dry practice?
Oh, yeah. On a regular basis.
Good.
And I have always, and in revolver particularly, I think it really helps you master the trigger dry fire training with an unloaded gun. I'm going to say again, you know, don't put a hole in the TV set. But if you're home and you can do that, you know, do that. You talked about Jerry. I had understood years ago that any time of his friends would call and he'd talk to them on the phone, they'd hear this click, 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 click in the background because he's always practicing his trigger pull. That's why he's a world champion. That's why he can do what nobody else can do. He's always practicing. Now, most people don't need to do that much or would be interested in doing that much, but it's a critical part.
But if you want to be world class, I mean, it's
you got
to eat, breathe, sleep, drink.
Exactly.
You know, you got to really live it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. You know, so I could definitely see, especially with the revolver being a platform, that I do think that for a lot of shooters in this day and age, if it's something that you're looking at considering seriously, there's a lot of benefit that can be had by doing some dry practice.
Right. That's you can be very, very accurate with a revolver because the barrel is fixed. It's not a moving part of the action. And by mastering the double action trigger pull, which just takes some practice, you know, you'll be an excellent shot with that. You'll be able to do the job.
What are some guns out there on the market right now that you see are doing a really good job as far as triggers go? You know, there's definitely, trigger can make a world difference in a double action revolver like that.
The Bodyguard 38 that I mentioned, Ruger's LCRs has a very nice trigger pull, and I know
I agree with that.
They engineered the frame shape and some other things there to make that the best experience possible, because not everybody's equal in terms of hand strength and capabilities and all.
Yeah.
And so those two have some very fine triggers available. Ruger spent a lot of time doing it.
I absolutely agree with you on the LCR. In fact, I've mentioned that to a number of shooters, particularly like those with weaker hands.
Yes.
I do think that's a trigger as far as double action revolvers go that is pretty easy to manage, I think, for a lot of shooters.
Exactly. And, again, one thing we didn't mention, if not everybody can go to the range all the time and practice.
Yeah.
And certainly not the amount of time needed to be really proficient with the semi-automatic. But you can go and become capable with a revolver, capable of not having an accidental discharge with the revolver, you know, and being safe with it much more quickly, and it does not need constant refreshing. You know, it's just for people that aren't going to be able to go to the range a lot and don't want to necessarily practice a lot, because there's people out there like that. They're not all enthusiasts. They want to buy that gun for protection. The revolver is going to be a great choice.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Scott, this has been a pleasure. A lot of great information and content together with you here today. So I really appreciate your time that you've made for us this evening, and wish you the best in all of your future endeavors.
Appreciate that.
We'll look forward to crossing paths again.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to thank you all again for being with us from the live coverage here at the Concealed Carry Expo here in Louisville, Kentucky. Hope that you've enjoyed this live coverage. We'll have a lot. We've got a full day tomorrow. Let me just give you a tease of a few of the folks on the schedule coming up right off the get-go in the morning. 9 a.m. Eastern tomorrow morning, we've got Beth Alcazar from USCCA. Writes a lot of the articles in the Concealed Carry magazine. Beth's a wonderful lady. A lot of great insight from her.
Outstanding shooter, too.
She really is.
She's a great shot.
Absolutely. We got Steve Burnett from Live Fire Drill Cards coming up at 9:30. Kevin Michalowski, 10 a.m. We've got we got Tony Lambrea, we got Rob Pincus, Mike Hughes, Dave Young, Gabby Franco, Gary Quisenberry, Michael Martin. This is just tomorrow. We've got a bunch more interviews lined up for Sunday as well for our coverage from this show. So hope to see you again tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern. The show goes up until 6 p.m. Eastern tomorrow evening. We'll have coverage throughout the whole day. A few of us will be kind of bouncing around as we have a few commitments here and there. Jacob and I will be back on the demonstration stage at some point. I'm doing a seminar presentation tomorrow. I'll actually miss the interviews with Beth and Steve as I'll be doing a seminar presentation at 9 a.m. But folks, be safe out there. Keep training hard. Maybe take a few minutes tonight and do a little bit of dry fire practice. And we'll see you in the morning. Take care. We'll see you